I watched my daughter smile as the old contracts curled into black ash inside my fireplace. Claire Prescott believed she had just erased the last proof that my late husband had spent a lifetime protecting me. She looked at me and whispered, "Now there's nothing left to stop me." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply watched the flames because Richard had once told me something I would never forget. Paper can burn, Evelyn, but the truth doesn't disappear when certified copies still exist. Claire thought she had won. She had no idea the real evidence had been waiting for her all along. If this story touches your heart, I'd love for you to stay with me until the very end. Please, like this video if you've ever believed that truth always finds its way back. Subscribe if you enjoy stories about family resilience and justice. And before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I always love reading your messages because they remind me that none of us is ever truly alone. My name is Evelyn Prescott, and for most of my life, I believed a home was more than walls, windows, and a mortgage payment. A home was the smell of coffee before sunrise. It was the sound of my husband Richard whistling in the garage while he fixed a chair that any other man would have thrown away. It was Sunday pot roast Christmas stockings, unpaid bills spread across the kitchen table, and two tired people promising each other that one day all the struggle would mean something. Richard and I bought our house in Columbus, Ohio, when we were still young enough to believe hard work could fix almost anything. It was a modest 2-story home on a quiet street lined with maple trees. The porch sagged a little when we first moved in. The basement leaked after heavy rain. The upstairs bathroom had yellow tile that I hated from the first day I saw it. But Richard stood in the front yard, hands on his hips, smiling like he had just bought a mansion. "Evelyn," he said, "this place has good bones." That was Richard's way of seeing the world. He saw what things could become, not just what they were. Together, we built more than a home. We built Prescott Home Furnishings, a small furniture store that started in a rented storefront between a laundromat and a tax office. I kept the books. Richard handled customers' repairs, deliveries, and anything that required charm. He had plenty of that. People trusted him. They trusted both of us. We sold dining sets to newlyweds, rocking chairs to new grandmothers, bedroom furniture, to families moving into their first homes. We were not rich, but we were respected. And in a city where people came and went, respect meant something. For 37 years, I watched Richard save every receipt, every purchase order, every signed agreement. He labeled folders with a black marker. He kept copies in filing cabinets in boxes, sometimes even in a metal tin he said was, "For the papers that matter when people stop being kind." I used to laugh at him for that. "Richard," I would say, "who do you think is coming after us, the furniture police?" He would tap the folder with one finger and say, "Evelyn, good people keep records, so bad days don't get the final word." Back then, I thought he was just being careful. Now I know he was being wise. We had one child, our daughter, Claire Prescott. She was beautiful from the day she was born, with sharp blue eyes and a stubborn little mouth that looked exactly like mine when I was angry. Richard adored her. He spoiled her in quiet ways, slipping $20 bills into her coat pocket, fixing her car before she asked, driving across town just to bring her soup when she had a cold. I loved her too, of course. A mother's love is not always soft. Sometimes it is worry. Sometimes it is staying awake until headlights turn into the driveway. Sometimes it is forgiving a tone of voice you would never accept from anyone else. Claire was bright, ambitious, and restless. She wanted more than our little store, more than Columbus, more than what she called a predictable life. After college, she moved to Chicago, married a man named Peter, and built a life that looked impressive from a distance. Holiday cards showed polished floors, matching sweaters, ski trips, smiling friends. But phone calls told a different story. Her marriage was cold. Her husband controlled the money. She felt lonely, unseen, trapped. When she finally called me one rainy April evening and said, "Mom, I'm leaving him," I did not ask questions first. I said, "Come home." Richard had been gone almost 4 years by then. Cancer took him slowly, the way cruel things often do, piece by piece, until the man who once carried armoires by himself needed help getting from the bed to the bathroom. After he died, the house became too quiet. I kept his robe on the hook behind the bedroom door for nearly a year. I still set 2 coffee mugs on the counter some mornings before remembering there was only me. So when Claire came home, I told myself it was a blessing. She arrived with 2 suitcases, 3 boxes, and a face that looked both exhausted and embarrassed. I met her on the porch before she could knock. She fell into my arms like a child again, and for a moment I felt every year between us disappear. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "For what?" "For needing you at my age." I held her tighter. You are never too old to need your mother. For the first few weeks, things were almost sweet. Claire cooked dinner twice. She cleaned out the pantry. She helped me move Richard's old magazines from the den. She sat with me in the evenings and asked about the store, about her father, about old neighbors. I mistook her questions for grief. "Did Dad sell the business outright?" she asked one night while we were drying dishes. "Yes," I said, "years before he got sick. And the money, some went into retirement, some paid off the house, some covered medical bills." She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the plate in her hands. A few days later, she asked, "Did Dad leave everything to you?" I looked up from my crossword puzzle. "Everything that mattered, yes." "What does that mean?" "It means your father made sure I would be taken care of." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, that makes sense." After that, the questions came more often. Where did Richard keep the original sale agreement for the store? Did we still have contracts from the early years? Was the house only in my name now? Had Richard ever created a trust? Did I remember which lawyer handled the paperwork? At first, I answered what I could. I thought Claire was trying to help me organize. I was 69, not helpless, but I had to admit paperwork had piled up since Richard died. There were folders in the study boxes and the basement envelopes tucked into bookshelves. Claire made it sound practical. "Mom, you can't leave all this scattered everywhere," she said one afternoon, standing in the doorway of Richard's old office. "What if something happens to you?" Something about the way she said it made me turn around. "Something like what?" She blinked. "I just mean you're alone here. I've been alone here for 4 years." "I know, but you're getting older." There it was, a phrase small enough to pass as concern sharp enough to cut. "You're getting older." I tried not to take offense. Daughters worry, daughters fuss. Daughters sometimes forget their mothers were women before they were mothers. So I let her sort a few cabinets, I let her make labels, I let her carry boxes to the dining room table. She seemed calmer when she had control over something. Then one Saturday morning, I found her sitting at Richard's desk, with 3 folders open in front of her. The room smelled like dust and lemon polish. Sunlight came through the blinds in thin stripes across the papers. Claire did not hear me at first. She was reading carefully, lips pressed together, one hand resting on a stack of old contracts. "Claire!" She startled so hard, one folder slid to the floor. "Mom!" she said quickly. "You scared me. I could say the same." She laughed, but it sounded forced. I was just trying to understand what's what. I bent down to pick up the folder. Her hand reached it before mine. "I've got it," she said. For the first time since she had come home, I felt something cold move through me. Not fear exactly. Recognition. The same feeling I used to get when a customer at the store smiled too much while trying to return damaged furniture they knew they had broken themselves. I looked at my daughter and realized she was not merely organizing. She was searching. That evening, she was unusually quiet at dinner. She pushed green beans around her plate and barely touched the chicken. I asked if she was feeling all right. "I'm fine." That evening, she was unusually quiet at dinner. She pushed green beans around her plate and barely touched the chicken. I asked if she was feeling all right. "I'm fine," she said. But after I washed the dishes and turned off the kitchen light, I heard her in the hallway outside Richard's office speaking softly into her phone. "No," she whispered. "I haven't found the originals yet." I stopped halfway up the stairs. My hand tightened around the banister. Claire paused, then said, "I know, but if Dad kept them anywhere, they're in this house." A long silence followed. Then she said the words that made the floor beneath me feel suddenly unsteady. "Mom has no idea what they're worth." I did not confront her that night. Maybe I should have. Maybe everything would have changed if I had stepped into that hallway and demanded the truth. But mothers are foolish in one particular way. We keep hoping there is an innocent explanation, even after innocence has already left the room. The next morning, Claire came downstairs dressed neatly, her hair pinned back, her smile gentle and practiced. "Mom," she said, pouring coffee into my favorite blue mug, "I was thinking we should go through Dad's old paperwork together this week." I wrapped both hands around the warm mug. Why the sudden interest? She looked at me as if I had wounded her. "Because I'm your daughter. Because I don't want you overwhelmed. Because Dad wouldn't want you dealing with all this alone." Hearing Richard's name in her mouth softened me when it should have warned me. I nodded slowly. "Maybe." Claire reached across the table and touched my hand. Then she asked the question that stayed with me long after the coffee had gone cold. "Mom, where did Dad keep the originals?" After Claire asked where Richard kept the originals, I did not answer right away. I remember sitting at that kitchen table with the blue coffee mug between my hands, watching steam rise and disappear. Outside, the maple tree in the front yard was beginning to turn green again. Spring had always made me feel hopeful. That morning, it made me feel exposed. What originals, I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. Claire gave a small laugh. "Mom, don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like I'm asking something strange. I mean Dad's important papers, contracts, agreements, deed records, business documents, things like that." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Your father kept papers in many places." "That's not helpful." Her tone was sharper than she intended. I saw her catch herself immediately. She softened her face, reached across the table, and patted my hand like I was a nervous child. "I'm sorry," she said. "I just don't want anything to get lost." Something about that sentence stayed with me, because Claire did not sound afraid something would get lost. She sounded afraid something would be found. Over the next 2 weeks, my home changed in small ways. Not enough for a stranger to notice. Not enough for me to complain without sounding dramatic. But enough that I started waking up with a tight feeling in my chest. Claire began collecting the mail before I could get to the porch. At first, she said it was because the steps were uneven. "Mom, you nearly tripped last winter," she said, dropping a stack of envelopes onto the kitchen counter. "Let me handle it." I almost reminded her that I had been walking up and down those steps since before she was born, but I swallowed the words. I was trying to keep peace. When your grown daughter returns home wounded from a failed marriage, you give her more grace than you should. Then she started opening the mail. Only the important-looking things, she said. Bills, bank statements, insurance notices, letters from the county, anything with a return address that looked official. One afternoon, I found a letter from my attorney, Daniel Brooks, already slid open and placed neatly beside my placemat. "Claire," I said, holding it up, "why is this open?" She barely looked away from her laptop. "I thought it might be about property taxes. It has my name on it. I know, Mom. I'm helping you. I didn't ask you to help me with my private mail. That made her close the laptop. Her face changed. Not anger yet. Something colder. Private, she said. I'm your daughter. That doesn't make my mail yours. She stared at me for a moment, then smiled in that careful way people do when they are trying not to show contempt. You're right, she said. I'm sorry. I just worry. I wanted to believe her. I truly did. But after that, envelopes disappeared. Not all of them. Just enough to make me doubt myself. A notice from the insurance company that I remembered seeing on the counter was gone by dinner. A statement from the bank, never dinner. A statement from the bank never reached my hands. A postcard from the county recorder's office appeared one morning, then vanished before I could read the back of it. When I asked about it, Claire frowned. Mom, are you sure reached my hands? A postcard from the county recorder's office appeared one morning, then vanished before I could read the back of it. When I asked about it, Claire frowned. Mom, are you sure? There it was again. Are you sure? 3 small words that can make an older woman feel suddenly unsteady. I saw it, I said. You've been misplacing things lately. No, I haven't. She sighed as if my denial hurt her. Last week you put your reading glasses in the freezer. I did not. They were beside the frozen peas. I stared at her. I had no memory of doing that, but I also had no memory of finding them there. Claire had simply walked into the living room holding them, laughing gently. See, she had said. This is why I worry. Now I wondered if she had put them there herself. The thought horrified me so much, I pushed it away. A mother does not want to believe her child would do something cruel just to make her feel confused. So I told myself Claire was stressed. I told myself divorce had made her controlling. I told myself grief came out in strange ways. Then Jason Miller arrived. Claire introduced him on a Friday evening, like his presence was a small detail she had forgotten to mention. He stood on my porch with a leather duffel bag in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. He was tall, handsome, in a polished sort of way, with silver at his temples, and a smile that looked practiced in mirrors. Mrs. Prescott, he said, extending his hand. Claire has told me so much about you. I looked past him at my daughter. Jason is staying for a few days, Claire said quickly, just until he finds a place closer to work. I had never heard of Jason before that week, but he came inside as if he already belonged there. Within 3 days, his duffel bag became 2 suitcases. His shaving kit appeared in the upstairs bathroom. His expensive black coffee took over the pantry shelf where Richard's tea used to sit. His car stayed in my driveway every night. I asked Claire about it while Jason was outside taking a call. You said a few days. She kept folding towels. He's between leases. That doesn't answer me. He's good to me, Mom. I didn't say he wasn't. You looked at him like he was a burglar. I almost said, he moved in like one. Instead, I took a breath. I just would have liked to be asked. I didn't say he wasn't. You looked at him like he was a burglar. I almost said, he moved in like one. Instead, I took a breath. I just would have liked to be asked. Claire dropped the towel into the basket. This is exactly why I didn't ask. You make everything harder than it needs to be. I felt the words hit me in the chest. My own kitchen, my own laundry basket, my own daughter telling me I was making things hard. Jason was charming when Claire was watching. He complimented my cooking-carried grocery bags, called me ma'am, and offered to fix the loose railing on the basement stairs. But when Claire left the room, his eyes wandered over the house like a man estimating value. Nice neighborhood, he said one morning, standing by the front window. It has been good to us. Homes around here are moving fast. I looked up from my newspaper. Are they? Oh, yes, especially older homes with character. Buyers love that. This house is not for sale." He turned and smiled. "Of course not. I was just making conversation." But he made that same conversation often. He asked when the roof had been replaced, whether the basement had ever flooded, whether the mortgage was paid off, whether Richard had refinanced before he died, whether my name was the only one on the current deed. Each question came wrapped in politeness. Each one felt like a hand testing a locked door. Meanwhile, Claire grew bolder. She made an appointment with my doctor without asking me, then told me about it as if I were a child being taken to school. "Why did you call Dr. Hensley?" I asked. "Because you've seemed forgetful." "I am not forgetful. Mom, you lost the county postcard." "I didn't lose it." She gave me a sad look. "This is what I mean." At the appointment, she tried to answer questions for me. Dr. Hensley asked how I was sleeping. Claire said, "Poorly." I said, "Fine." He asked if I had trouble remembering names. Claire said, "Sometimes." I said, "No." He looked between us, uncomfortable. Finally, I turned to my daughter and said, "Claire, I can speak for myself." Her cheeks flushed. On the drive home, she did not say a word until we pulled into the driveway. Then she turned off the engine and sat gripping the steering wheel. "You embarrassed me." I almost laughed from shock. "I embarrassed you. I am trying to protect you." "No," I said quietly. "You are trying to manage me." Her head snapped toward me. For a moment, the mask slipped. The softness disappeared. The wounded daughter disappeared. What remained was a woman who needed control and hated being denied it. Then just as quickly she looked down. "I'm scared," she whispered. And because I was her mother, that whisper did what anger could not. It reached the part of me that still remembered her at 6 years old crying because thunder shook the windows. I softened. "I know divorce was hard," I said. "You don't know everything," she replied. "What does that mean?" She shook her head. "Nothing, but it was not nothing." That night, after she and Jason went upstairs, I walked into Richard's office and opened the bottom drawer of his old filing cabinet. I had not searched deeply before because grief had made certain drawers feel sacred. His handwriting was still on the folders. His old reading glasses still sat in the pencil cup. His sweater still hung on the back of the chair. But now I needed answers more than comfort. Several folders were missing. Not empty, missing. The folder labeled Store Sale Final Agreement was gone. So was property transfer documents. So was Prescott family ownership records. My hands went cold. I checked the cabinet twice, then the desk, then the storage boxes beneath the window. Nothing. As I stood there, I heard Jason's voice upstairs through the vent. "Did you find them?" Claire answered too softly for me to hear. Then Jason said clearer this time. "You said your father kept everything." My breath stopped. Claire murmured something. Jason laughed under his breath. "Then look harder. The attorney won't move without clean paperwork." Attorney. Move. Clean paperwork. I backed away from the vent, one hand pressed against my chest. The next morning, Claire came downstairs wearing a navy dress I had never seen before. Jason waited by the door, checking his watch. "You're going somewhere?" I asked. Claire picked up her purse. "Just an appointment." "What kind of appointment?" She smiled without warmth. "Nothing for you to worry about, Mom." After they left, I went to the kitchen window and watched Jason's car pull away. That was when I saw the folder on the back seat. A dark green folder. Richard's folder. The one labeled Property Transfer Documents. And for the first time, I understood that my daughter had not come home only because she needed me. She had come home because she needed what I owned. That afternoon, after Claire and Jason drove away, I stood at the kitchen window for a long time, staring at the empty driveway. There is a particular kind of silence that enters a house when betrayal becomes possible. It is not the ordinary quiet of walls and furniture. It is heavier than that. It presses against your ears. It makes every clock tick sound like a warning. I turned away from the window and walked slowly to Richard's office. For years, I had avoided digging too deeply through that room. I dusted it, of course. I vacuumed the rug. I opened the windows in spring. But I left most things where he had placed them, as if moving them would admit he was never coming back. His chair still sat slightly crooked behind the desk. His old cardigan hung over the back. A yellow legal pad lay beside the lamp with his handwriting on the top page. Call Mason about delivery truck. A task from another lifetime. I ran my fingers over the desk. "Richard," I whispered. "What did you know that I didn't?" The green folder I had seen in Jason's car was gone from the cabinet, but Richard had never trusted a single hiding place. He used to joke that if our store were ever robbed, the thieves would get tired before they found the truly important papers. I began searching carefully. Not frantically, not yet. I opened drawers and looked behind false stacks of old catalogs. I checked the hollow space under the removable tray where Richard kept pens and rubber bands. I pulled out faded tax returns, warranty booklets, old payroll records, and photographs of Claire as a little girl standing beside a sofa with a big red sold tag hanging from it. Every object seemed to carry a memory. Every memory hurt. After nearly an hour, I found nothing except dust on my sleeves and an ache in my knees. I sat down in Richard's chair and looked toward the ceiling. The old house settled around me with a wooden sigh. Then I remembered the attic. Not the main attic where Christmas decorations and suitcases were stored. The smaller crawl space above the back bedroom, the one Richard called the place for things nobody needs until they really need them. I had not climbed those narrow pull-down stairs since before his diagnosis. The idea frightened me. I was not fragile, but I was honest about my body. My balance was not what it had once been. My knees complained on rainy days, and if Claire came home and found me on a ladder, she would use it as another example of my poor judgment. But fear can become useful when it has nowhere else to go. I retrieved a flashlight from the pantry, dragged a chair to the upstairs hallway, and pulled the cord for the attic stairs. They unfolded with a groan that made me wince. Just slow, I told myself. One step at a time. The attic smelled of insulation, old wood, and summer heat trapped from years before. Dust floated in the flashlight beam. Boxes sat in uneven rows beneath the slanted roof. Some were labeled in my handwriting, Christmas Claire School Kitchen Extras. Others were Richard's store photos, tools do not toss. I almost laughed when I saw that last one. Of course, I crawled toward it, careful not to put my weight between the beams. The cardboard was soft at the corners, but the tape still held. Inside were broken picture frames, a brass lamp base, and a stack of old newspapers. Under the newspapers was a metal tin. Blue-gray. Scratched. Familiar. My heart began beating so hard, I had to sit back on my heels. Richard's tin. He had kept it in the office years ago, then moved it sometime after we sold the business. I had forgotten all about it. Or maybe grief had buried the memory for me. The latch resisted at first. Then it snapped open. Inside were documents wrapped in a clean white towel, along with a small note in Richard's handwriting. Evie, don't panic. Read first. My throat tightened. Only Richard called me Evie. For a moment, I did not touch anything. I simply stared at his handwriting and felt the room blur. Then I unfolded the towel. There were several old contracts, some originals, some copies, each sealed in clear sleeves, a purchase agreement from when we first bought the building for Prescott Home Furnishings, a final sale contract from when we sold the business, a family capital contribution agreement signed by Richard and me, a property ownership clarification document prepared after we used proceeds from the business sale to pay off the house, and beneath all of them, a thin folder labeled Home Protective Terms. My hands trembled as I opened it. I had never been a lawyer. I had kept books for the store-handled invoices, balanced accounts, and caught more math mistakes than Richard ever admitted. But legal language was another country. Still, some sentences are clear enough, even when dressed in formal words. The house, after payoff, was to remain my primary residence. No transfer, sale lien, or financial encumbrance could be executed without my direct written consent. No heir, beneficiary, or family member could claim authority over the property while I was living and mentally competent. And then there was one paragraph underlined in Richard's careful hand. Any attempt to pressure, misrepresent, destroy, conceal, or alter supporting contracts related to the ownership and protection of the residence shall be considered evidence of bad faith. Bad faith. The phrase made my stomach turn. I read it again, then again. I thought of Claire opening my mail, Jason asking about the mortgage, the green folder in his car, the doctor's appointment, the reading glasses in the freezer. The way Claire kept saying, "Are you sure?" My daughter was not only searching for papers, she was building a story. A story where I was confused. A story where she was responsible. A story where my signature, my silence, or my supposed incompetence could become a key in her hand. I pressed Richard's note against my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt less foolish and more awake. Then the floorboards creaked below. I froze. A door opened downstairs. Claire's voice floated up through the hallway. "Mom!" I turned off the flashlight so quickly the attic fell into darkness. Jason's voice followed. "Her car's here." I had not heard them pull in. My pulse thundered in my ears. I gathered the contracts as quietly as I could, but the plastic sleeves crackled in my shaking hands. "Mom, Claire," called again, closer now. I slid the folder back into the tin, but one document slipped loose and landed against my knee. I recognized the title at the top, Property Ownership Clarification and Residence Protection Agreement. Before I could tuck it away, the attic stairs shifted. Light from the hallway spilled upward. Claire stood below looking up at me. Her expression changed in stages. First surprise, then alarm. Then something that looked almost like rage. "What are you doing up there?" she asked. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Looking for Christmas things." In April, Jason appeared beside her at the bottom of the stairs. His eyes moved from my face to the tin beside my knee. "Well," he said softly, "looks like you found more than ornaments." Claire climbed 2 steps. "Mom, come down. That is not safe. I'm fine." Her at the bottom of the stairs. His eyes moved from my face to the tin beside my knee. "Well," he said softly, "looks like you found more than ornaments." Claire climbed 2 steps. "Mom, come down. That is not safe." "I'm fine. You are not fine. You could fall." I said I'm fine. She looked at the tin again. "What is that?" "Your father's?" Her mouth tightened. "Bring it down." "No." The word surprised both of us. I had said it quietly, but the attic seemed to hold it and send it back stronger. Claire blinked. "Excuse me." "No," I repeated. "These are my papers. Mom, don't be ridiculous." Jason gave a small sigh as if I were wasting everyone's time. "Mrs. Prescott, nobody is trying to take anything from you. We just need to know what documents exist so Claire can help organize things properly. I don't need Claire to organize these. Claire's face flushed. You don't even understand half of what you're looking at. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Not because it was true, but because she meant it to be. I looked down at my daughter, my only child, standing at the bottom of the attic stairs, as if I were an obstacle in her own house. But it was not her house. That thought rose inside me like a match struck in the dark. I understand enough, I said. Jason's eyes narrowed. Claire climbed another step. Hand me the tin. I pulled it closer. No. For a second, no one moved. Then Claire laughed. It was not a warm laugh. It was sharp and disbelieving. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said. You're acting paranoid. I am acting careful. You're acting confused. The word landed exactly where she aimed it. Confused. I thought of Dr. Hensley, the mail, the missing folders, the glasses in the freezer. I understood then that this would not end with one argument in an attic. Claire had already begun preparing the world to doubt me. I had to be smarter than anger. Slowly, I slid the most important folder beneath my sweater against my waistband, hidden by the loose fabric. Then I closed the tin with several less important papers still inside. I'm coming down, I said. Claire stepped back, but her eyes never left my hands. I descended carefully, one step at a time, holding the tin where she could see it. When I reached the hallway, she took it from me before I could protest. This is for your own good, she said. I looked at her. No, I said. It's for yours. Her eyes flickered. Jason put a hand on her shoulder. Let it go for now. For now. I heard those words clearly. That night, after they went to bed, I locked my bedroom door for the first time since Richard died. I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled the hidden folder from under my sweater. The agreement was still there. So was Richard's handwritten note. At the bottom, beneath his warning to read first, he had written one more line. If anyone ever tries to make you feel powerless, remember where the certified copies are. I stared at those words until tears finally came. Not because I was afraid, because even from the grave, Richard had reached back through time and placed a shield in my hands. The next morning, Claire knocked on my bedroom door before 7. I was already awake. I had barely slept. Richard's folder lay under my mattress, wrapped in an old pillowcase, pressed flat between two quilts I had not used since winter. Every time the house creaked, I opened my eyes and listened. Every footstep in the hallway made my body stiffen. When Claire knocked, my first instinct was to reach for the folder. Mom, she called. Are you up? I sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed my robe. Yes. She opened the door before I invited her in. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. She stood there dressed in cream slacks and a pale blue blouse, her hair curled neatly around her face. She looked like the Claire who used to come home from college interviews bright and polished and impossible to refuse. Behind her, Jason lingered in the hallway with a travel mug in his hand. We have an appointment at the bank at 10, Claire said. I looked at her carefully. What appointment? She smiled. I told you last week. No, you didn't. Her eyes flickered toward Jason, then back to me. Mom. Yes, I did. We talked about updating your accounts. We did not talk about that. Jason stepped slightly into view. Mrs. Prescott, it's just a planning meeting. Nothing dramatic. I disliked the way he used my last name when he wanted distance and ma'am when he wanted charm. With whom? I asked. A personal banking specialist, Claire said. It's time we put some safeguards in place. Safeguards for what? For you. Her voice softened. For your finances. For the house. For everything Dad left. At the mention of Richard, Something inside me tightened. I handle my own accounts. Mom, you still write checks for the electric bill. There is nothing illegal about writing checks. That's not the point. What is the point then? Claire came into the room and sat beside me on the bed. The mattress dipped under her weight. She reached for my hand, but I folded both hands in my lap. Her mouth tightened, but she kept her voice gentle. The point is, you're alone. And after yesterday, climbing into the attic like that? She shook her head. It scared me. I climbed into an attic, Claire. I didn't walk into traffic. You could have fallen. I didn't, but you could have. That was how she argued now. Not about what happened, but about what could have happened. Every possibility became evidence against me. Jason cleared his throat. The bank can help set up authority in case of emergencies. What kind of authority? I asked. Claire answered too quickly. Just so I can help if you get sick. If I get sick, my attorney has instructions. Her expression changed. Only for a second. But I saw it. Daniel Brooks is old-fashioned, she said, and he's not family. No, I said. He is my attorney. The room went quiet. Jason took a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim. Claire stood. The appointment is already made. Please, don't make this difficult. There it was again. Difficult, paranoid, confused. Words placed like stones in a path they wanted me to walk. I thought of Richard's note beneath my mattress. If anyone ever tries to make you feel powerless, remember where the certified copies are. Not yet, I told myself. I needed to understand what Claire was trying to do before I showed her what I knew. So I dressed in my navy church suit, the one Richard always said made me look like a woman who could run a board meeting. I pinned my silver hair back, put on pearl earrings, and slipped Sarah's old grocery list notepad into my purse. I wanted something to write on if I needed to remember names. Claire looked surprised when I came downstairs. Jason looked amused. Well, he said, don't you look official? I am going to a bank, I replied. Not a picnic. Claire's jaw tensed, but she said nothing. The ride was uncomfortable. Claire drove. Jason sat in the front passenger seat, though it was my car they were using. I sat in the back like a child being taken somewhere she had no say in. As we passed familiar streets, I remembered driving to that same bank with Richard years ago carrying deposit bags from the furniture store. He would park crooked every time, and I would scold him while he laughed. You worry too much, Evie, he used to say. But Richard worried too. He just worried in folders, signatures, and copies. The bank lobby smelled of carpet cleaner and coffee. Sunlight came through tall windows, shining on polished desks and potted plants. A young teller greeted Claire by name. That struck me. You've been here already? I asked. Claire adjusted her purse strap. Just to ask questions. What questions? General ones. Before I could press further, a woman in a gray blazer approached us. She looked to be in her late 40s, with kind eyes and a professional smile. Mrs. Prescott, she said, looking directly at me, not Claire. I'm Sarah Collins' branch manager. I liked her immediately for that small courtesy. I'm Evelyn Prescott, I said. She shook my hand firmly. It's nice to meet you. Claire stepped forward. I'm Claire, her daughter. We spoke on the phone. Sarah nodded politely, but her eyes returned to me. Mrs. Prescott, would you like to come back to my office? Well, I'll come, Claire said. Sarah paused. That is up to your mother. A silence fell. Claire turned to me with a smile that begged and warned at the same time. I could have said no. Maybe I should have. But I wanted to hear the plan spoken out loud. They can come, I said. Sarah's office had 2 chairs facing her desk. Jason took one before I could sit. Claire took the other. I remained standing for one awkward second until Sarah quickly brought another chair from the corner and placed it beside the desk closer to her. Please, she said to me. Sit here. I felt Claire watching. Sarah opened a folder. So, my understanding is that you wanted to discuss account access and possible financial power of attorney. I turned to Claire. Power of attorney. Claire gave a nervous laugh. Not like that, Mom. There is only one kind of phrase that sounds like power of attorney. Jason leaned forward. It's standard planning. For whom? For someone your age, he said. Sarah's pen stopped moving. I looked at him. Someone my age? Claire cut in. Jason means it's normal to prepare. Mom, nobody is taking anything. That sentence has been said to me too often lately. Claire's face reddened. Sarah slid a document across the desk, but she kept one hand on it. Mrs. Prescott, she said carefully. This form would allow another person to conduct certain financial transactions on your behalf. It can be limited, but depending on how it is executed, it may give significant authority. I picked up the paper. The words blurred at first, not because I could not read them, but because anger was rising too quickly. Durable financial power of attorney. Agent Claire Prescott. Alternate Agent Jason Miller. I looked up slowly. Jason is on this. Claire swallowed. Only as backup. He is not my family. He's my partner. He has lived in my house less than a month. Jason sat back. That's unfair. No, I said. Unfair is putting your name on my financial authority paperwork without asking me. Claire's voice dropped. Mom, lower your voice. I had not raised it. Sarah watched all of us, her expression calm but alert. Mrs. Prescott, she said, do you understand this document? Yes, I said. I understand that my daughter brought me here under false pretenses. Claire's eyes shone, but I could not tell if it was with tears or fury. I am trying to protect you, she said. Then why is Jason listed? Because if something happens to me, something has already happened to you, I said. But it does not give you the right to happen to me. The room became very still. Jason stood abruptly. This is going nowhere. Sarah's voice remained steady. Mr. Miller, please sit down. He looked at her surprised. She turned to me. Mrs. Prescott, do you feel pressured to sign this document today? Claire inhaled sharply. I looked at my daughter. For one painful second, I saw her as a little girl with scraped knees, running to me because the world had hurt her. Then I saw the woman she had become sitting in a bank office, trying to place herself and her boyfriend between me and everything Richard had left. Yes, I said. I do, Claire whispered. Mom. Sarah closed the folder. Then we will not proceed. Jason muttered something under his breath. Claire stood. This is ridiculous. She doesn't understand what she's refusing. Sarah looked directly at her. Your mother appears to understand very clearly. Those words settled over me like a blanket. For days, maybe weeks, Claire had made me feel smaller, older, uncertain. Sarah Collins, a stranger, had given me back one simple thing: credibility. As we left the office, Sarah walked beside me. Near the lobby, she handed me her business card and folded my fingers around it. Call me directly, she said softly, low enough that Claire could not hear. Anytime, especially if you ever feel pressured again. I looked into her eyes and understood she had seen more than I had said. In the car, Claire cried, not loud sobs, silent tears that rolled down her face while she gripped the steering wheel. You humiliated me, she said. I stared out the window. No, Claire, I refused you. Jason turned around from the front seat. You just made a very big mistake. For the first time, I did not flinch. No, I said quietly. I think I just avoided one. When we got home, Claire went straight upstairs. Jason followed her, whispering harshly. I stood alone in the foyer, Sarah's business card hidden in my palm. Then I heard Jason's voice from above. We need another way before the closing date. Closing date. The words struck like a bell. I looked toward the staircase, my fingers closing tighter around the card. Now I knew this was not about helping me. This was about taking the house. That evening, I did not go upstairs right away. I stayed in the foyer long after Claire and Jason disappeared into the second-floor hallway, listening to the muffled argument above me. Their voices rose and fell behind closed doors. I could not make out every word, but I heard enough. Bank manager. Too risky. She knows something. Closing date. Each phrase landed like a pebble dropped into deep water, sending circles of fear through me. I stood there with Sarah Collins's business card pressed in my palm until the edges bent. Then I walked into the kitchen, turned on the small lamp over the stove, and sat at the table where Richard and I had once planned our whole life. For the first time since Claire came home, I admitted something out loud. My daughter is trying to take my house. The words sounded impossible in my own kitchen, yet once spoken, they did not disappear. They sat across from me like an unwanted guest. I wanted to call Daniel Brooks, my attorney, immediately. I wanted to call Sarah. I wanted to call someone who would tell me I was not crazy, not confused, not overreacting. But it was after business hours, and I knew Claire would notice if I disappeared into my bedroom and started making phone calls. So I waited. Waiting is a terrible thing when you know danger is already inside your home. At 9:30, Jason came downstairs alone. He found me still sitting at the kitchen table. He stopped in the doorway. Couldn't sleep, I haven't tried. He opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter like he owned the room. You know Evelyn? He said, using my first name for the first time. Claire is under a lot of pressure. I imagine she is. She's trying to rebuild her life. I know. She lost a lot in the divorce. I looked at him. Did she? His jaw shifted. More than she told you. That was the first honest thing he had said, though he meant it as bait. What did she lose? He gave a small shrug. Security? Stability? Money? Peter made sure she walked away with less than she deserved. And you think my house should fix that? His eyes hardened. Then he laughed softly. That's not what I said? No, but that is what you meant. He set the water bottle down with just enough force to make the table tremble. You have more than you need, he said. There it was. Not charm, not concern, not planning. Entitlement. I stared at him across my kitchen and felt something inside me steady. Fear was still there, but it had a backbone now. This house is not extra, I said. It is my home. He smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. Homes can become burdens, only to people who don't love them. Before he could answer, Claire appeared behind him in the doorway. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying, or pretending to cry. Jason, she said, go upstairs. Before he could answer, Claire appeared behind him in the doorway. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying, or pretending to cry. Jason, she said, go upstairs. He did not move at first. Then he grabbed the water bottle and walked past her, muttering, This is why nothing gets done. Claire waited until we heard his footsteps overhead. Then she came into the kitchen and sat across from me. For 1 second, I saw exhaustion in her face. Real exhaustion. The kind that comes from running after something you know you should stop chasing. Mom, she whispered. Why are you fighting me? My heart hurt despite everything. because you are asking for things you have no right to ask for. I am trying to survive. You can survive without taking from me." Her mouth twisted. "That is easy for you to say. You have everything." I almost laughed, but the sound would have broken into tears. "Everything," I said. "Claire, I buried your father. I wake up in a bed that still feels too big. I make coffee for one person. I walk through rooms full of memories because memories are all I have left of the man who built this life with me." She looked away. I leaned forward. "Do not mistake what I have left for something I did not lose." For a moment, she said nothing. Then her face hardened again, as if softness was a door she could not afford to leave open. "You don't understand what it's like to start over at my age." "No," I said. "I understand what it is like to start over after holding your husband's hand while he died." Her eyes filled, but she stood too quickly for the tears to fall. "I can't talk to you when you're like this." "Like what?" "Suspicious. Dramatic. Cold." The words should have wounded me. Instead, they confirmed what I already knew. Claire was no longer speaking to me as a daughter. She was speaking to me like a person preparing a case. She left the kitchen. I remained there until the house went quiet. At midnight, I went to Richard's office. The door was open. That alone made my skin prickle. I always left it closed. The desk drawers were pulled out. The filing cabinet stood open. Papers lay scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Someone had gone through everything again, but this time without even pretending to be careful. I knelt slowly, my knees aching, and began searching. The remaining folders were gone. Not just the obvious ones: tax files, store records, copies of old insurance forms, even Richard's handwritten inventory books from the early years of Prescott Home Furnishings. I opened the bottom drawer, already knowing what I would find. Empty. Then I went upstairs, locked my bedroom door behind me, and lifted the mattress. The pillowcase was still there. For a second, relief nearly knocked me off balance. I pulled it out and checked the folder inside. Richard's note, the protective agreement, the property clarification document, still there. I pressed them to my chest and breathed, but relief did not last long. At 2 a.m, I woke to footsteps outside my door. Slow, careful. I held my breath. The knob turned once, twice. It stopped when the lock held. A pause. Then Claire's voice, low and tight. "Mom?" I did not answer. Another pause. "Mom, are you awake?" I stayed perfectly still. After several seconds, footsteps moved away. The next morning, Claire acted as if nothing had happened. She made oatmeal. She placed my blood pressure pill beside my bowl. She asked whether I wanted cinnamon. Jason sat at the table reading something on his phone, smiling at the screen. The ordinary scene felt more frightening than anger would have. I did not eat much. Claire noticed. "You need to take better care of yourself," she said. "I have managed so far." "Barely." Jason looked up. "Claire found a very nice assisted living community." My spoon stopped midway to my mouth. Claire shot him a warning look, but he continued. "It's not a nursing home," he said. "It's beautiful. Private apartments, activities, meals, people your age. People your age." I placed the spoon down carefully. "I am not moving into assisted living." Claire sighed. "No one said today. No one should say ever. This house is too much for you." "It was not too much for me until you moved into it." Her face flushed. Jason leaned back. "That's a cruel thing to say after your daughter gave up her life to come help you." I turned to him. My daughter came here because she needed a place to stay. Claire stood so fast, her chair scraped against the floor. You have no idea what I gave up. Then tell me. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Jason answered for her. She gave up being humiliated by Peter, while you sat here in your paid-off house, pretending loneliness is the same as hardship. That was when I understood the shape of their resentment. They did not see my home as a lifetime of work. They saw it as an unfair advantage, something I had no right to keep while they felt desperate. That afternoon, Claire left for what she called errands. Jason stayed behind. I kept my bedroom door locked and waited until I heard him go into the garage for a phone call. Then I picked up the hallway extension and listened. I knew it was wrong. I also knew wrong had already entered my house wearing a smile. Jason's voice came through faintly. No, she didn't sign. The bank shut it down. Claire can still claim concern, but we need documentation. Yes, the buyer is still interested. Closing date can hold if title clears. No, the old woman doesn't have originals anymore. My heart hammered. Then he said, Claire has the contracts. If necessary, they disappear tonight. I quietly lowered the phone. Contracts. Disappear. Tonight. I went straight to the bedroom, pulled the hidden folder from under the mattress, and placed it inside the lining of my old winter coat in the closet. Then I took several harmless papers from a drawer, wrapped them in the pillowcase, and slid them back beneath the mattress. If Claire came looking, she would find something. But not what mattered. At dusk, I stood at the upstairs window and saw Claire return. She sat in the driveway for several minutes before coming in. Her hands were still on the steering wheel. Her face looked blank, the steering wheel. Her face looked blank, almost empty. When she finally entered, she did not look at me. She walked upstairs with a brown envelope under her arm. Later that night, I heard her whispering to Jason. I found another file, where almost empty. When she finally entered, she did not look at me. She walked upstairs with a brown envelope under her arm. Later that night, I heard her whispering to Jason. I found another file, where her room, and she's hiding more than she admits. A long silence followed. Then Claire said something that chilled me more than anything before it. If she won't let go of the house, we'll make everyone believe she can't manage it. I sat in my dark bedroom fully dressed, my winter coat folded across my lap. For the first time, I was not only afraid of losing my home, I was afraid my daughter was trying to erase my voice before she erased my name from everything Richard and I had built. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my bedroom with the lights off my winter coat folded across my lap like a shield. Inside the lining were Richard's hidden papers, the ones Claire had not found. The rest of the house seemed to breathe around me. Old pipes, ticking floorboards, settling a branch, tapping against the window. Every sound made me wonder if Claire was coming back to my door. By morning, I had made one decision. I could not fight this alone. There are moments in life when pride becomes dangerous. I had always been independent. Richard used to tease me that I could carry a sofa with one hand if stubbornness counted as strength. But this was not about stubbornness anymore. This was about legal papers, a possible sale, a daughter willing to make me look incompetent, and a man in my house who had already shown me exactly what he wanted. After breakfast, Claire watched me more closely than usual. You look tired, she said. I didn't sleep well. That's what I mean, Mom. You're under too much stress. I looked at her over my coffee cup. Stress usually has a source. She pretended not to understand. Jason sat beside her scrolling through his phone, one ankle resting on his knee. He had become comfortable enough to stop pretending he was a guest. I'm going to take a walk later, I said. Claire frowned. Alone, I've walked alone for many years. You should wait for me. No, I need air. Jason glanced up. Take your phone. Wouldn't want anyone worrying. The way he said worrying made my skin crawl. An hour later, I put on my walking shoes, tucked Sarah Collins' card into my purse, and slipped Richard's note into the inner pocket of my coat. I did not take the protective agreement. That stayed hidden. I only needed the note because of one sentence written at the bottom. Remember where the certified copies are? The problem was, I did not know where. Richard's clue felt clear and impossible at the same time. I walked 3 blocks to the corner, then turned away from the park and headed toward an old brick ranch house with white shutters and a flag hanging from the porch. Thomas Bennett lived there. He had been Richard's closest friend for over 30 years. Thomas was older than me, nearly 82, but his mind was sharp as a blade. Before he retired, he had worked around legal documents for half the county. Not as a lawyer, but as a notary records clerk, and the sort of man people trusted when signatures mattered. Richard used to say, if Thomas Bennett witnessed it, God and the county both know it happened. I had not visited him much after Richard died. Grief does that. It makes old friends feel like open wounds. When Thomas opened the door, he looked surprised, then deeply sad, in the way people do when they see someone connected to a person they miss. Evelyn Prescott, he said, softly. Well, come in before the wind takes you. His house smelled of coffee books and cedar polish. Framed photographs lined the hallway, Thomas and his late wife Thomas and Richard holding fishing poles. Thomas standing in front of the county courthouse years ago in a brown suit that looked too wide at the shoulders. He led me to the kitchen and poured coffee without asking. You look like someone carrying a heavy question, he said. I tried to smile. Several, actually. He sat across from me. Then start with the one that brought you here. I took Richard's note from my pocket and slid it across the table. Thomas put on his glasses. The moment he saw Richard's handwriting, his face changed. He did not read quickly. He read with reverence. When he reached the last line, he closed his eyes for a moment. That sounds like Richard. You know what he meant? I asked. Thomas looked at me over his glasses. I believe I do. My hands tightened around the coffee mug. Thomas, Claire is looking for old contracts. Some are already gone. Jason is pushing her. They tried to get me to sign financial power of attorney. I heard them talking about a closing date. His expression darkened. Closing date for what? My house. Thomas was silent long enough for fear to rise in my throat. Then he said, Have you signed anything? No. Have you agreed to a sale? No. Has anyone declared you incompetent? No. But I think they're trying to make me seem that way. Thomas leaned back, his jaw tight. Richard worried about this. The words hit me so hard I almost dropped the mug. What? Not Claire, specifically, he said quickly. Not because he hated her. He loved that girl. But after he got sick, he worried about what money does to people when fear gets involved. He said illness changes a family. Death changes it again. Property can bring out grief in ugly clothing. Tears burned my eyes. He never told me. He didn't want you living afraid. I looked down at the table. Thomas tapped the note gently. Years ago, when you and Richard sold Prescott Home Furnishings and paid off the house, he asked me to witness several documents. He wanted certified copies made of anything connected to ownership proceeds, transfer restrictions, and residence protections. Certified copies, I whispered. Yes. Where are they? At the Franklin County Recorder's Office. Some may also be archived through the title company that handled the payoff and property clarification. But the county recorder would be the first place to go. I felt the first real breath enter my lungs in days. So even if the originals are missing, certified copies still exist. Thomas said. And if they were properly recorded or certified, your daughter burning or hiding originals will not erase what was already preserved. The kitchen blurred. I pressed a hand over my mouth. Thomas reached across the table and covered my other hand with his. Evelyn, listen to me. Paper in a house can disappear. Public records do not vanish because someone wants them to. For several seconds, I could not speak. Then I asked, "Do you remember what was in those documents?" "Some." He rubbed his forehead. There was the business sale contract, a capital contribution agreement showing how proceeds were used, a residence protection agreement. Richard was very particular about that one. He wrote that no one could sell or encumber the house without my direct consent. Thomas nodded. That sounds right. There was something about bad faith. His eyes sharpened. Yes. What does it mean? It means if someone tries to pressure you, conceal documents, destroy records, or misrepresent your authority, it becomes evidence against them. Against Claire. If Claire is the one doing it, yes. The words made my heart twist. Even after everything hearing it spoken plainly hurt. Thomas saw it. She is still your daughter, he said gently, but being your daughter does not give her the right to harm you. I closed my eyes. A mother's heart is a strange thing. It can recognize danger and still grieve for the person causing it. What do I do? I asked. You get the certified copies before they complete whatever scheme they've started. Can they sell the house without me? Legally not, if what you're telling me is accurate, practically. People can create confusion. They can lie to buyers, pressure title agents claim authority, produce incomplete documents. That's why you need records in your hands and Daniel Brooks involved. I'm afraid to call from home. Then don't. Call from here. He stood and brought me his landline. My fingers trembled as I dialed Daniel's office. His assistant answered, and I asked for the earliest appointment. When I said my name, she placed me on hold. Less than a minute later, Daniel came on the line himself. Evelyn, is everything all right? No, I said. I need help. Those 4 words broke something open in me. I told him enough. Not everything, but enough for his voice to turn serious. Do not sign anything, he said. Do not give anyone access to your remaining papers. Go to the recorder's office with Thomas if you can. Ask for certified copies of every recorded document tied to the property the business sale proceeds and any residence protection agreement under your and Richard's names. There may be a closing date. Then we move quickly. After I hung up, Thomas was already writing down addresses and names. I'll take you tomorrow morning, he said. Claire will notice. Let her. I'm afraid of what she'll do. Thomas paused, then looked toward the framed photo of him and Richard. Evelyn. Richard once told me something after a long day at the store. He said, "My Evie trusts people because she loves them. So I keep records because I love her." Tears spilled before I could stop them. He said that. Thomas nodded. He knew your heart. He also knew the world. I wiped my face with a napkin. For the first time since Claire had come home, I felt Richard close, not as a memory that made me weak, but as a strength he had left behind. Before I left, Thomas handed me a small envelope. What's this? A copy of my old notary log entry from the day Richard signed those papers. It's not the main proof, but it helps establish that the documents existed. I held it carefully. Why did you keep this? Thomas gave me a sad smile. Because Richard asked me to keep anything that might one day protect you. On the walk home, the air felt different. The trees were still bare in places, the sidewalks cracked, the sky pale and cold. But I was not the same woman who had left the house that morning. Claire and Jason had originals. They had pressure. They had lies. But Richard had left me something stronger. A trail. A witness. and certified copies waiting in a county office where fire could not reach them. When I reached my porch, Claire opened the front door before I touched the knob. "Where were you?" she asked. I looked at my daughter, then at Jason standing behind her in the hallway. "For a walk," I said. Claire's eyes narrowed. That was a long walk. I stepped inside and removed my coat slowly. "Yes," I said. It gave me time to think. Jason watched me with suspicion. I smiled faintly, not because I felt safe, but because for the first time, I knew they were not the only ones planning. The next morning, I woke before sunrise with one clear thought in my mind. I had to get out of that house before Claire and Jason realized where I was going. Thomas Bennett had promised to take me to the Franklin County Recorder's office, but the appointment felt like a small bridge over deep water. All I had to do was reach it. All I had to do was walk out my own front door with my purse, my coat, and enough courage not to shake. I dressed quietly in my bedroom. I chose dark slacks, a gray sweater, and the same winter coat with the hidden lining where Richard's papers had rested through the night. I did not take the protective agreement this time. It was too dangerous to carry the only copy I still had. Instead, I tucked Richard's handwritten note into my purse, along with Thomas's envelope and Sarah Collins's business card. At 7:30, I heard Claire moving in the kitchen. Cabinets opened. A spoon struck ceramic. The coffee machine hummed. For years, that sound had meant morning comfort. Now it sounded like surveillance. I waited until I heard Jason turn on the shower upstairs. Then I opened my bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The house was dim and still. Richard's photograph stood on the hall table, the one taken outside Prescott Home Furnishings on the day we replaced the old sign. He had one arm around me, the other raised proudly toward the storefront. I paused and touched the frame. "Stay with me," I whispered. Then I moved toward the stairs. I had almost reached the front door when Claire's voice came from the kitchen. "Where are you going?" I stopped with my hand on the knob. There are moments when guilt rises even though you have done nothing wrong. That is what fear does when it has been trained long enough. For one breath, I felt like a child caught sneaking out. Then I remembered this was my house. I turned. Claire stood in the kitchen doorway, wearing a robe, her hair loose around her shoulders, her face pale and suspicious. "For a walk," I said. "With your purse, I may stop for coffee." "Where, Claire?" "I do not need permission to leave my home." Her eyes dropped to my coat, then to my purse. "Mom," she said carefully, "we need to talk. Not now." "Yes. Now." I tightened my grip on the doorknob. "I have plans." "What plans?" Before I could answer, Jason appeared at the top of the stairs with wet hair and a towel around his neck. "What's going on?" Claire did not look away from me. "She's leaving." Jason came down slowly, where I looked from one to the other, and in that moment, I understood something. They were not simply worried I might go somewhere. They were afraid I might reach someone. That made my decision harder and easier all at once. "I'm meeting a friend," I said. Claire's face changed. "What friend? Thomas Bennett?" The name struck her like a slap. Jason stopped halfway down the stairs. "Why would you meet Thomas Bennett?" Claire asked. "Because he was your father's friend, and I wanted to see him." Jason came the rest of the way down. His voice was low now, controlled. "Did you talk to him yesterday?" I said nothing. Claire's breath caught. "You did," she whispered. "That's where you were." I reached again for the door. Claire crossed the room faster than I expected and grabbed my wrist. Let go, I said. Not until you tell me what you said to him. Her fingers were cold and tight. Claire, remove your hand. Jason moved behind her. Evelyn, nobody is trying to hurt you. We just need to understand what you're doing. I pulled my wrist free. No, you need to stop me from doing it. The silence after that was dangerous. Claire's eyes filled with something close to panic. What did he tell you? She asked. I should have lied. I should have stayed calm. But I was tired. Tired of being watched. Tired of being doubted. Tired of hearing my own daughter speak to me like I was an inconvenience standing between her and a prize. He told me Richard was smarter than both of you, I said. Jason's jaw hardened. Claire stared at me. Then her gaze moved to my purse. Give me your bag. No. Mom, give it to me. I backed toward the door. Absolutely not. She lunged. It happened so fast that I barely had time to react. Claire grabbed the strap of my purse and yanked. I held on, but my balance shifted. My hip struck the small table near the foyer. Richard's photograph fell face down on the floor. The sound of glass cracking filled the room. For 1 second, all three of us froze. I looked down at the broken frame. Something inside me cracked with it. You broke his picture, I whispered. Claire looked at the floor, then back at my purse. You did that by fighting me. That sentence told me everything. Even broken glass at her feet could become my fault. Jason stepped forward and took the purse from my loosened hand. Let's just see what's in here, he said. No, I reached for it, but Claire blocked me. Jason emptied my purse onto the entry table. My wallet, keys, tissues, Sarah's business card, Thomas's envelope, Richard's handwritten note. Claire snatched the note first. As she read it, her face went blank. Jason picked up Thomas's envelope and opened it. What is this? He muttered. Claire did not answer. Her eyes were fixed on Richard's words. If anyone ever tries to make you feel powerless, remember where the certified copies are. Her hand began to tremble. Certified copies? She said. Jason looked sharply at her. What? She lifted her eyes to me. For the first time since she had come home, Claire looked frightened. Not guilty, not sorry, frightened. You knew, she whispered. I knew enough. Jason grabbed the note from her hand and read it. His expression changed from confusion to anger. Recorder's office, he said. Claire turned on him. You said the originals mattered. They do matter, but not if certified copies exist. Jason's eyes flashed toward me. Where are the other papers? I said nothing. Claire stepped closer. Mom, where are they? My documents are none of your business. Her face twisted. Your documents, she said. Everything in this house is tied to Dad. I'm his daughter, and I was his wife. You don't get to use him against me. I am not using him. I am listening to him. She slapped the table with the note still in her hand. He is dead. The words rang through the foyer. My breath left me. Claire seemed startled by her own cruelty, but only for a moment. Then pain became anger again. He's dead, she repeated lower now. And you are sitting on everything he built like the rest of us don't matter. I stared at her. You think this is about mattering? It's about fairness. No. It is about greed dressed up as fairness. Her face hardened completely. That was when she saw the corner of an old contract peeking from the side pocket of my coat. I had forgotten it was there. Not the protective agreement, not the most important document, but one of the old store-related originals I had kept from the tin, thinking it might help Daniel understand the trail. Claire saw it and moved before I did. She reached into my coat and pulled it free. Jason's eyes widened. There are more, he said. Claire searched the other pocket and found 2 more folded papers. "Claire," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "put those down." She looked at the contracts in her hands, then at the fireplace in the living room. A cold wave passed through me. "No," I said. Jason understood at the same time I did. "Claire." But she was already moving. I followed her, my legs unsteady, my voice rising. "Claire, don't you dare!" She grabbed the long lighter from the mantel. The fireplace still held ashes from the night before. She placed the first contract inside, flicked the flame, and held it to the corner. The paper caught slowly at first. Then the flame curled upward. I felt the room tilt. "That belonged to your father," I said. Claire's eyes shone with tears, but her mouth was hard. "No," she said. "It belonged to the past." She dropped the burning contract into the fireplace, then the second, then the third. I stood there, watching Richard's signatures blacken and twist. I smelled smoke, old paper ink, and something that felt like the burning of memory itself. Jason did not stop her. He only watched, breathing hard. Claire turned to me with ash reflected in her eyes. "There," she said. "Now whatever story Thomas filled your head with is over." I looked at the flames. My grief was so deep, it became stillness. She thought she had destroyed the proof. She thought the fire had made her safe. But beneath the pain, beneath the shock, beneath the sight of Richard's handwriting turning to ash, one sentence rose inside me like a bell. Paper burns. Public records don't. I lifted my eyes to my daughter. "You should not have done that," I said. Claire laughed once, bitter and triumphant. "Why? What are you going to do now?" I did not answer, because the truth was already waiting for me downtown, stamped, sealed, and certified by the county. And Claire had just given me one more thing Richard's agreement warned about. Destruction, bad faith, proof. After Claire burned those contracts, the house became strangely quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet in the way a courtroom becomes quiet after someone has just said something unforgivable. Ash floated behind the fireplace screen. Thin black scraps curled against the brick. The smell of smoke clung to the living room curtains, to my sweater, to the air between my daughter and me. Claire stood with the lighter still in her hand, breathing hard, as if she had run a mile instead of destroying pieces of her father's life. Jason stood behind her, tense and watchful. Neither of them looked victorious for long. Because I did not collapse. I did not scream. I did not beg. I simply looked at the fire until the last orange edge of paper disappeared into gray. Then I turned and walked toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" Claire asked. "To my room." "We are not finished." I stopped, but did not turn around. "You are finished with me for today." Jason stepped forward. "Evelyn," I faced him then. "Do not say my name, like you have any right to it." His mouth closed. Claire's eyes were wet now, but I had learned not to trust tears that came only after cruelty failed. "Mom," she said softer, "you have to understand." "No," I said. "You have spent weeks trying to make me understand your desperation. Now you will understand my silence." I went upstairs, one step at a time, because my legs were shaking. I locked my bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed until my breath stopped coming in short, sharp pulls. Then I called Thomas Bennett. He answered on the second ring. "Evelyn, she burned them," I whispered. There was a long pause. "What did she burn?" "The old contracts I had with me. Store documents, some of Richard's originals. She took them from my coat and burned them in the fireplace. Thomas exhaled slowly.
Are you safe?
I'm in my room. Can you leave? Not through the front door without them seeing. Then listen carefully. Margaret Ellis still lives next door, doesn't she?
Yes. Call her. Ask if she can take you out through the side gate. I'll meet you at the recorder's office.
My throat tightened. Today, right now, I looked toward the bedroom window. From there, I could see Margaret's kitchen light through the bare branches between our houses. Margaret Ellis had been my neighbor for 23 years. She had brought casseroles when Richard was sick and shoveled the porch steps the winter after he died, even though I told her not to fuss. I had not wanted to involve her, but pride had nearly trapped me once already. I called. Margaret picked up with her usual bright voice. Evelyn, everything all right? No, I said. I need help leaving the house quietly. There was no gasp, no flood of questions, just a short, serious silence. Then she said, "Give me 5 minutes." Side gate. I hung up and moved quickly. I took my purse, Sarah's business card, Thomas's envelope, and Richard's note. The protective agreement remained hidden in the lining of the old winter coat hanging in the closet. I hated leaving it, but I was afraid Claire would search me again. The real answer was not in that room anymore. It was downtown, in records no fireplace could touch. I opened my bedroom window halfway and looked down at the side yard. It was too high to climb from, but I could see whether anyone was outside. No one. I unlocked my bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. Voices came from downstairs. Claire was crying now. Jason was not comforting her. "You panicked," he said sharply. "She had papers. You burned evidence in front of her. You told me originals mattered. I told you to control the situation, not create a witness." My hand froze on the banister. A witness. They knew. The destruction was not just cruelty. It was dangerous for them. That knowledge carried me down the back stairs, through the laundry room, and out the side door Richard had installed years ago, after a winter storm damaged the old one. Margaret was waiting by the gate in a red cardigan and sneakers, her gray hair tucked under a knit cap. She saw my face and opened the gate without a word. Only when we were in her car did she ask hospital police or lawyer county recorder's office. She looked at me once, then started the engine. "County recorder it is." As we drove through Columbus, the city looked painfully ordinary. People walked dogs. A school bus stopped at a corner. A man in a business suit carried coffee across a crosswalk. The world had not paused because my daughter had burned my husband's papers. That felt unfair somehow. I sat in Margaret's passenger seat, gripping my purse while my phone buzzed again and again. Claire, Claire, Jason, Claire. I turned it face down. Margaret glanced at it. "Want me to throw that thing out the window?" Despite everything, I almost smiled. "No, not yet." Thomas was waiting outside the Franklin County Recorder's office when we arrived. He wore a brown coat and held a folder under one arm. Seeing him there made my knees weaken with relief. He opened my car door. "You made it," he said. "Barely." Margaret came around and took my elbow. "She's not going in alone." Thomas nodded. Good. Inside the office smelled of paper toner and old government buildings. There were counters with glass partitions, computer terminals, and people waiting with numbered tickets. To anyone else, it was a place of routine paperwork. To me, it felt like a sanctuary. Thomas guided me to a clerk named Denise, a woman with short dark hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain. "How can I help you?" she asked. My voice nearly failed. Thomas stepped in gently. "We need certified copies of recorded documents tied to Richard and Evelyn Prescott Home Furnishings and the residence located on Maple Ridge Drive. Likely recorded after the business sale and payoff of the property."
Denise typed quickly. I watched her fingers move across the keyboard, as if my life depended on each keystroke. Because in a way, it did. She asked for identification. I handed over my driver's license. She verified my name, the property address, Richard's full legal name, and several approximate dates Thomas provided from his old notary log. Minutes stretched. The printer behind the counter hummed. Denise frowned at the screen, clicked again, and said, "There are multiple recorded documents." My breath caught. Thomas leaned closer. "Including a residence protection agreement." Denise scrolled. "Yes, I see a recorded memorandum referencing one. There is also a property ownership clarification satisfaction record connected to the mortgage payoff and an attachment related to business sale proceeds." I gripped the counter. "They're there," I whispered. Denise looked up at me kindly. "Yes, ma'am. They're here." My eyes filled so fast I could hardly see her. For days, Claire had made me doubt my memory, my judgment, my strength. But here, in a government office under fluorescent lights, my truth appeared on a screen. Not as emotion, not as accusation, as record. Denise printed the first certified copy, then the second, then the third. Each page came with official marking stamps and the seal that made it more than paper pulled from a drawer. When she placed the stack before me, I touched the top page with trembling fingers. There was Richard's name. There was mine. There was the language protecting my right to live in my home. And there on the final page was Richard's signature. Not burned, not gone, not silenced. Margaret put a hand on my shoulder. Thomas's voice was thick when he said, "Richard knew what he was doing." Denise continued sorting. "There's also an addendum referenced here." Thomas looked sharply at her. "An addendum?" "Yes, it was recorded separately." She clicked again. "Looks like it has restricted inheritance language tied to bad faith interference." A chill went through me. "I don't know about that one," I said. Thomas looked at me with quiet intensity. "Richard may not have wanted you to need it unless things became serious." Denise printed it. The addendum was only a few pages, but as I read the first paragraph, the room seemed to narrow around me. If any heir or beneficiary knowingly attempted to coerce, mislead, financially exploit, conceal documents from, destroy supporting contractual records belonging to, or initiate unauthorized transfer of the protected residence during Evelyn Prescott's lifetime, such conduct would be treated as a bad faith forfeiture event. Forfeiture? My mouth went dry. I read the sentence again. Claire had not only tried to take the house, she had just endangered her own claim to anything connected to it. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail appeared. I did not play it. Then a text from Claire came through. "Where are you? If you don't answer, I'm calling the police and telling them you're confused." I showed the phone to Thomas. His face hardened. Margaret muttered, "Oh, honey, she really picked the wrong mother today." For the first time all morning, I felt something stronger than fear. Not revenge, resolve. I turned to Denise. "Can I have 3 certified sets of everything she asked?" "Yes," I said, hearing my voice steady. "Everything." As the printer began again, I looked down at Richard's signature. Claire had burned old paper in my fireplace and thought she had erased him. But Richard Prescott had left his truth where fire could not reach, where lies could not rewrite it, and where even a daughter's betrayal could not make it disappear. I sat in the recorder's office with 3 certified sets of documents in front of me, and for several minutes, I could not move. The papers were heavier than they looked. Not because of the ink, not because of the county seal pressed into the page. They were heavy because they carried Richard's foresight, my protection, and the final proof that my daughter had crossed a line no grief, no fear, and no desperation could excuse. Thomas Bennett sat beside me reading the addendum slowly. Margaret Ellis stood behind my chair with one hand resting on my shoulder as if she feared I might fall apart if she let go. I did not fall apart. But something inside me did change. Until that moment, part of me had still been hoping for a misunderstanding. Maybe Claire had been frightened. Maybe Jason had pushed her. Maybe she had not understood the seriousness of what she was doing. Then I read the addendum again. Any heir or beneficiary knowingly attempted to coerce, mislead, financially exploit, conceal documents from, destroy supporting contractual records belonging to, or initiate unauthorized transfer of the protected residence during Evelyn Prescott's lifetime. My eyes stopped on one phrase: destroy supporting contractual records. Claire had stood in my living room and fed those records to the fire with her own hands. She had not just hurt me. She had activated the very protection Richard had written for the day someone might try. I pressed my fingers to my lips. Thomas looked at me gently. Evelyn, she did exactly what this says. His face was solemn. Yes, she destroyed them. Yes, and she tried to pressure me at the bank. Yes, and she hid documents. Thomas folded his hands over the folder. From what you've told me, yes. I looked down at Richard's signature on the final page of the addendum. His handwriting was steady, familiar, alive in a way that made my heart ache. He knew I whispered. Thomas shook his head slightly. He prepared. That's not the same as knowing. But he must have feared it. He feared leaving you unprotected. Thomas leaned closer. That is different from expecting Claire to betray you. Those words mattered. I needed them to matter, because if I believed Richard had died, knowing our daughter might one day try to take my home, it would break something in me. I was not ready to lose. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. Honey, what do you want to do now? That question frightened me more than the documents, because now I had power. For days, Claire and Jason had made me feel trapped, watched, dismissed, reduced. Now the papers had shifted the ground beneath us all. I had proof. I had certified copies. I had witnesses. I had Daniel Brooks waiting for my call. But power in a mother's hands is complicated when the person who harmed her is still her child. I don't want to destroy her, I said. Thomas sighed softly. Protecting yourself is not destroying her. She will say I chose papers over my daughter. Margaret came around and sat in the chair across from me. Her kind face hardened in a way I had rarely seen. No, Evelyn. She chose the house over her mother. Those are not the same thing. The truth of that hurt. I turned my phone over. There were 6 missed calls from Claire, 2 from Jason, and 4 text messages. The newest one was from Claire. Mom, this has gone too far. Come home before you embarrass yourself. The next message came 3 minutes later. If you are with Thomas, remember he is old and confused too. Then Jason's message. You are creating legal trouble for everyone. Be smart. I showed them to Thomas. His mouth tightened. Forward those to Daniel. I did. Then I called Daniel Brooks again. This time, when his assistant answered, I did not wait long. Daniel came on the line almost immediately. Evelyn, did you get the records? Yes, I said. And there is an addendum, a bad faith forfeiture addendum. I closed my eyes. You knew about it. I drafted it with Richard. The room seemed to tilt slightly. You drafted it? Yes, Richard insisted on it. He said if anyone ever tried to force you out or take advantage of your trust, the documents needed teeth. Teeth. That sounded like Richard too. Kind, generous Richard, who still knew a locked door was sometimes necessary. Daniel? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Claire burned some of the originals this morning. Silence. Then his voice changed. She did what She took them from my coat and burned them in the fireplace. Were there witnesses? Jason saw it. That won't help unless he admits it. Anyone else? No. Did she say anything? I swallowed. She said whatever story Thomas filled my head with was over. Daniel was quiet for a moment. That is enough to be concerned. Combined with the text, the bank incident, and the missing files, we have a pattern. What happens now? First, you do not go home alone. I looked at Thomas and Margaret. I'm not alone? Good. Second, I want you in my office today. Bring all certified sets. Third, do not speak to Claire or Jason without a witness present. Fourth, if they attempt to restrain you, threaten you, remove you from the property, or claim you are incompetent, call the police immediately. Hearing the word police made my stomach turn. She's my daughter, I said before I could stop myself. Daniel's voice softened. I know, but she is also an adult making dangerous choices. I looked at the addendum again. Does this mean she loses everything? It means her actions may trigger forfeiture of any claim tied to the protected residence. But we need to proceed carefully. The goal right now is to stop any unauthorized sale and secure your position. There is a closing date, I said. I heard them mention it. Then I will contact the title company and record a notice if necessary. Did the documents identify any title company? Thomas pulled one page toward him and pointed to a line. Buckeye Heritage Title, I said. Daniel exhaled sharply. That helps. I'll call them now. Before hanging up, he said one more thing. Evelyn, listen to me. Richard did not create that addendum because he wanted you to punish your family. He created it so no one could use your love against you. When the call ended, I sat very still. No one could use your love against you. That sentence reached a place in me that had been bruised for weeks. Claire had used my love from the moment she walked onto my porch with suitcases and tears. She used it when she opened my mail and called it concern. She used it when she put Jason at my table and called it support. She used it when she tried to make me sign away authority and called it protection. And when I resisted, she called me confused, difficult, cold, old. Maybe that was what hurt most. Not that she wanted the house, but that she had been willing to make me doubt myself to get it. Denise returned with the final certified set and placed everything into large envelopes. Each envelope was stamped and labeled. She looked at me with the careful kindness of someone who had seen family disputes before and knew better than to ask too much. Keep these somewhere safe, she said. I will. Thomas paid the certification fee before I could reach for my wallet. Richard would haunt me if I let you pay for protection twice, he said. That almost made me cry again. We left the recorder's office together. Outside, the afternoon air was cool. Cars moved along the street. A bus hissed at the curb. Somewhere nearby, a church bell rang once. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from Claire. I played it on speaker with Thomas and Margaret beside me. Her voice came through tight and trembling. Mom, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you are scaring me. Jason says, if you don't come home, we may have to report that you wandered off in a confused state. I don't want to do that. Please don't force me. The message ended. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then Margaret said quietly, That girl just threatened you with the exact thing she's been building. Thomas nodded. Save that. I saved it. And for the first time, I stopped wondering whether Claire might still choose the truth before things went too far. Things had already gone too far. I looked down at the envelopes in my arms. Richard's protection was no longer a memory hidden in an attic or a note tucked into a coat. It was official. It was certified. It was strong enough to stand in rooms where my voice had been dismissed. Still, as Margaret drove me to Daniel's office, grief sat beside me like a fourth passenger. Because proof can save your home, but it cannot save the image of the daughter you thought you raised. Daniel Brooks's office sat on the third floor of an old brick building downtown above a bakery that smelled of butter and cinnamon. On any other day, that smell would have comforted me. That afternoon, I barely noticed it. I walked in carrying 3 certified sets of documents against my chest. Thomas walked on my right. Margaret stayed on my left. I must have looked like a woman being escorted into surgery. Daniel met us at the reception door himself. He was in his early 70s, tall and thin, with silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the serious face of a man who had spent his life reading the fine print other people ignored. Richard trusted him completely. That was enough for me. "Evelyn," he said gently, "come in." His conference room had a long wooden table, shelves of law books, and one window overlooking the street. I placed the envelopes on the table as if they were fragile glass. Daniel opened the first certified set and began reviewing each page. No one spoke for several minutes. The only sounds were paper sliding over wood, Daniel's pen tapping softly, and Margaret's quiet breathing beside me. Finally, Daniel looked up. "These are strong," he said. My shoulders sagged with relief. "They're enough. They are more than enough to stop any unauthorized sale. The residence protection language is clear. Your consent is required. The recorded memorandum ties the agreement to the property. The addendum creates consequences for bad faith interference." Thomas nodded. "That's what Richard wanted?" Daniel's face softened. Richard was not a fearful man, but he understood risk. I looked down at my hands. I keep wondering why he didn't tell me everything. Daniel removed his glasses. "Because he knew you loved Claire. He didn't want you looking at your daughter through suspicion unless life forced you to." That answer hurt, but it also sounded true. Daniel then turned one document toward me and pointed to a paragraph. "This is the key. Claire cannot sell, transfer mortgage, or otherwise encumber the residence without your direct written consent. Not verbal, not implied, written, signed, and given freely." "She tried to get power of attorney," I said. "I know. Sarah Collins already called me." I looked up surprised. "She did, this morning." She was careful, but she expressed concern. "She documented that you appeared alert, understood the document, and stated you felt pressured." A strange warmth moved through my chest. Sarah had not just been kind, she had left a record. Daniel continued. "I also spoke with Buckeye Heritage Title." My breath caught. "And they confirmed there is a pending file connected to your address." The room seemed to tilt. Margaret muttered, "Lord have mercy!" Daniel's expression remained controlled, but his voice hardened. The proposed seller authority was not complete. The title company had already flagged issues. They were waiting for clarification documents from Claire. "Clarification documents?" I asked. "Yes, likely the files she removed from your house, possibly altered or incomplete copies." Thomas leaned forward. "Was there a buyer?" There is a buyer, a couple from Cincinnati. They appear to have no idea there is a dispute. They believed Claire was acting with family authority." I closed my eyes. My own daughter had not only tried to take my home, she had invited strangers into the lie. "What happens now?" I asked. Daniel opened another folder. "I have already sent notice to the title company that you do not consent to any sale, transfer, or closing." I attached copies of the recorded protection memorandum. "The closing cannot proceed lawfully." A breath left me, but Daniel was not finished. "There is, however, something else." I opened my eyes. "What?" The title company said a meeting was scheduled tomorrow morning. Claire Jason, the realtor, the buyer's agent, and the buyer were expected to attend. The file was not ready to close, but Jason had been pushing for an expedited signing. "Tomorrow," Margaret said. Daniel nodded. 10 o'clock. Thomas looked at me. "That's why they panicked." My phone buzzed on the table. Claire again. This time Daniel held out his hand. May I? I nodded and gave him the phone. He read the message aloud. Mom, you need to come home now. You're making this worse. Jason says the police won't be patient if we explain you ran off confused. Daniel's mouth tightened. That is useful. Useful, I repeated. It feels cruel. It is both. A minute later, another message appeared. I love you, but I will not let you ruin all of us because you don't understand paperwork anymore. Daniel took a screenshot. Evelyn, he said, I want you to understand something clearly. This language is not random. She is laying groundwork. She is suggesting confusion, inability to understand paperwork, and need for intervention. I swallowed. I know. Good. Then you also need to know how we answer it. He placed the certified copies in front of me. We answer with facts. We answer with witnesses. We answer with records. Not shouting. Not pleading. Records. Richard's voice echoed through that sentence. Good people keep records so bad days don't get the final word. I almost smiled through my tears. Daniel looked at Thomas and Margaret. I recommend we attend tomorrow's meeting. My heart jumped. Attend? Yes. At the title company? Yes. You meet Thomas, if he is willing, and Margaret, if she is willing. Margaret sat straighter. I'm willing. Thomas nodded. Richard would expect me there. Daniel turned back to me. We will not ambush anyone. We will present the certified copies, state your position, and stop the transaction formally. If Claire has made false statements, they will surface. My mouth went dry. She'll hate me. Daniel's expression softened. She may, but Evelyn, she has already chosen to harm you. The question is not whether she will be upset. The question is whether you will allow that fear to keep you unprotected. I looked out the window. Down on the street, people walked past the bakery with paper bags in their hands. Life continued ordinary and indifferent. I don't want to humiliate her, I said. Then don't, Daniel replied. Tell the truth calmly. Let her own choices speak. That stayed with me. Let her own choices speak. We spent the next hour preparing. Daniel made copies, organized documents, marked pages with colored tabs. He wrote a formal statement revoking any implied authority Claire had claimed and confirming that no sale could proceed without my written consent. He also prepared a letter instructing the title company to preserve all communications connected to the attempted transaction. Why preserve communications, I asked, in case there is litigation or elder financial abuse concerns? The phrase made my stomach tighten. Elder financial abuse. It sounded official, distant, almost clinical, but beneath those words was something painfully intimate, a daughter opening her mother's mail, stealing documents, creating doubt, and trying to turn love into leverage. Before we left Daniel's office, he asked me one final question. Do you feel safe going home tonight? I did not answer quickly. My home was still mine, legally, undeniably mine, but Claire and Jason were inside it. They had searched my room. They had burned papers. They had threatened to call the police and claim I was confused. Margaret answered before I did. She's staying with me. I turned to her. Margaret. No argument? She said, I have a guest room, clean sheets, and a casserole in the freezer. You are not walking back into that house tonight. Thomas nodded. That's wise. Daniel agreed. I'll notify Claire by email that all communications should come through my office. She'll be furious. Perhaps, but she will be documented. That evening, I sat in Margaret's guest room with a cup of chamomile tea growing cold beside me. Through the wall, I could hear her television playing softly. The room smelled of lavender and laundry soap. It was the first night in weeks that I was not locked inside my own bedroom listening for footsteps. Still, I cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. just quiet tears into a borrowed pillow. I cried for Richard's burned signatures. I cried for the daughter who had once needed me and the woman who now threatened me. I cried because tomorrow I would walk into a room where Claire expected to sell my home, and I would have to stop her in front of strangers. Before turning off the lamp, I opened one certified copy and touched Richard's signature. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we finish what you protected me for." And for the first time, I did not feel like an old woman running from her daughter. I felt like a wife carrying her husband's last promise into battle. The next morning, I woke in Margaret's guest room before the alarm. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. The curtains were pale yellow instead of blue. The quilt smelled faintly of lavender instead of the cedar chest at home. Then everything returned at once. Claire, the fireplace, the certified copies, the title company meeting. My stomach turned. Margaret knocked softly and opened the door with a cup of coffee in her hand. "You don't have to be brave before breakfast," she said. That almost made me cry. "I don't feel brave." She set the coffee on the nightstand. "Good. Brave people usually don't." By 9:30, Daniel Brooks had arrived to pick us up. Thomas followed in his own car. I sat in Daniel's passenger seat with one certified set of documents on my lap, my hands resting on top of the envelope. Margaret sat behind me, quiet and steady. As we drove toward Buckeye Heritage Title, Daniel reviewed the plan one more time. We enter calmly. We let the title officer speak first. If Claire claims authority, I ask for the basis. Then I present the certified copies. You do not argue with Jason. You do not defend yourself against insults. If they say you are confused, we let the records and witnesses answer. I nodded, but my mouth was dry. What if Claire cries? Daniel glanced at me. Then she cries. What if she says I betrayed her? Then you remember who burned the contracts. I looked out the window. That image still lived inside me. Richard's signature curling into smoke. Claire's face lit by fire, her voice saying, "Now whatever story Thomas filled your head with is over." But the story was not over. It was about to be read aloud. Buckeye Heritage Title occupied a modern office suite with glass doors and gray carpeting. Everything about it looked calm, expensive, and neutral. A receptionist greeted Daniel by name, which told me he had already made his presence known. We were shown into a conference room with a long table and a pitcher of water in the center. Claire was already there. She sat on the far side of the table in a white blazer, her hair smooth, her makeup perfect, except for the shadows beneath her eyes. Jason sat beside her, jaw-tight phone in hand. A realtor named Patricia Wells sat near the end of the table, flipping anxiously through a folder. Across from them were a middle-aged couple I assumed were the buyers, looking increasingly uncomfortable. When Claire saw me, her face went still. Then she saw Daniel, then Thomas, then Margaret. For the first time, her confidence cracked in front of everyone. "Mom," she said, standing. "What is this?" Daniel answered before I could. "This is Evelyn Prescott, attending a meeting concerning her own property." Jason scoffed. "This is supposed to be a private transaction." Daniel placed his briefcase on the table. "Not when the owner did not authorize it." The buyer, a man with sandy hair and glasses, looked sharply at Patricia. "I'm sorry." The owner, Patricia's face lost color. Claire represented that she had authority to coordinate on behalf of her mother. Claire quickly said, "I do. My mother has been struggling. I've been managing things for her." Daniel looked at her calmly. On what legal basis? Claire swallowed. "I'm her daughter. That is not a legal basis." Jason leaned forward. We were in the process of updating power of attorney. No, Daniel said. You attempted to obtain financial power of attorney. Mrs. Prescott refused. The bank manager documented that she understood the document and felt pressured. Claire's eyes flashed. That bank manager misunderstood. I looked at my daughter and said softly, No, Claire. She understood perfectly. The room went silent. The title officer, a woman named Rachel Kim, entered carrying a file. She paused when she saw the number of people in the room. Daniel stood. Ms. Kim Daniel Brooks, counsel for Evelyn Prescott. Rachel's expression tightened, but she nodded. Yes, I received your notice yesterday, Jason muttered. Of course you did. Rachel sat and opened the file. Given the notice, we cannot proceed with any closing or signing today. The buyers looked stunned. The woman buyer turned to Claire. You said this was your family home to sell. Claire gripped the edge of the table. It is my family home. Daniel removed the certified documents from his envelope and laid them out carefully. It is Evelyn Prescott's protected residence, he said. Here are certified copies from the Franklin County Recorder's Office. Property ownership clarification. Residence protection memorandum. Business sale proceeds attachment. Bad faith forfeiture addendum. At the word forfeiture, Jason's face changed. Claire whispered, That isn't necessary. Daniel looked at her. It became necessary when documents disappeared, pressure was applied, and original contracts were destroyed. Patricia gasped. Destroyed Claire's face went white. Jason spoke quickly. No one destroyed anything relevant. Thomas leaned forward. His voice, though old, was firm. I witnessed Richard Prescott sign the original protections. I also maintained a notary log entry. Mrs. Prescott obtained certified copies yesterday. Those copies are valid. Jason pointed at him. You're not a lawyer. Thomas did not flinch. No, I am a witness. Rachel took the first certified copy and examined the seal. These appear official, she said. They are, Daniel replied. Claire shook her head. Mom is being manipulated. Thomas filled her head with nonsense. Daniel has always acted like Dad belonged more to him than to his own family. That hurt Thomas. I saw it in his eyes. But Daniel remained steady. Claire, did you or did you not remove documents from your mother's home? I was organizing. Did you or did you not open her mail? I was helping. Did you or did you not bring her to a bank to sign power of attorney listing yourself as agent and Jason Miller as alternate Claire's? Mouth trembled. For emergencies. Did you or did you not tell her that she was confused? She has been confused. Daniel slid my phone across the table, opened to the saved voicemail transcript. Did you threaten to report her as confused if she did not return home? Claire stared at the phone. The buyer's wife whispered, Oh my God. Jason stood. This is harassment. Rachel's voice sharpened. Mr. Miller, please sit down. He did not. Daniel turned one final page toward Rachel. The addendum defines bad faith interference to include coercion, concealment, destruction of supporting contractual records, and unauthorized attempts to transfer the protected residence. Rachel read silently. Then she looked at Claire. Ms. Prescott, did your mother sign a listing agreement? Claire did not answer. Patricia looked horrified. Claire told me her mother agreed verbally. Rachel asked again. Was there written consent from Evelyn Prescott? Jason said, This is a family matter. Daniel's voice cut through the room. No, this is a property matter, and the property owner says no. All eyes turned to me. For days, Claire had tried to make my voice smaller. In that room, my voice did not need to be loud. It only needed to be clear. I do not consent to the sale of my home. For days, Claire had tried to make my voice smaller. In that room, my voice did not need to be loud. It only needed to be clear. I do not consent to the sale of my home, I said. I never consented. I did not authorize Claire or Jason to act for me. I want this transaction stopped. Rachel closed the file. Then this transaction is stopped. The words landed with a finality that made my knees weaken. The buyer stood angry now. We're done here. His wife looked at me with sympathy. Mrs. Prescott, I'm sorry. We had no idea. I believe you, I said. Patricia turned to me, her face red with shame. Mrs. Prescott, I apologize. I should have confirmed directly with you. Yes, Daniel said. You should have. Claire sank into her chair. Jason looked at her not with love, not concern, not loyalty. With blame. You said she didn't have copies, he hissed. Claire's head snapped toward him. For a moment, their entire partnership showed itself. Not romance, not devotion, just two desperate people holding each other responsible for a failed scheme. Jason grabbed his phone and keys. This is on you, he said. Claire's face crumpled. Jason. But he was already walking out. The glass door shut behind him with a cold click. Claire sat frozen, abandoned in the room where she had expected to claim victory. I looked at my daughter, and the pain of it nearly broke me. Not because she had lost, because even then, part of me wanted to reach for her. But I did not. Daniel gathered the certified copies and placed one hand lightly over mine. Rachel turned to me. Mrs. Prescott, we will mark this file terminated pending legal review. Thank you, I said. Claire finally looked at me. Her voice was small now. Mom, what happens to me? I looked at Daniel's documents, then at the daughter I still loved, though I no longer trusted her. I don't know yet, I said. But for once, Claire, what happens next will not be decided behind my back. After Jason walked out of the title company, Claire did not move. She sat at the conference table with both hands flat against the polished wood, staring at the closed glass door, as if she expected him to come back and rescue the story they had built together. He did not come back. The buyers left first, still shaken and angry. The husband barely looked at Claire. The wife paused near me and touched my arm gently. I'm sorry, she said again. No house is worth doing this to a mother. Claire flinched as if the words had struck her. Patricia Wells, the realtor, gathered her folder with trembling hands. She apologized to Daniel, to Rachel Kim, and finally to me. Her voice shook when she said she should have insisted on speaking with me directly. Yes, I said quietly. You should have. It was not forgiveness, but it was not cruelty either. When the room finally emptied, except for Claire, Daniel, Thomas, Margaret, and me, the silence became unbearable. Claire looked smaller without Jason beside her. That was the terrible thing. For weeks, she had seemed hard, sharp, almost unrecognizable. But now, sitting alone in that white blazer, abandoned by the man who had promised her a way out, she looked like my daughter again, not innocent, but broken. Mom, she whispered. Daniel stood beside me, but he did not speak. He was giving me the choice. I took a slow breath. Claire, I need you to listen very carefully. Her eyes filled. Am I going to jail? The question went through me like a knife. I don't know. She covered her mouth. Daniel spoke gently but firmly. Claire, at this stage, your mother has not filed a police report. But there are serious concerns. Our report. But there are serious concerns. Attempted unauthorized sale, coercive conduct, destruction of documents, and possible misrepresentation to a title company are not small matters. Claire looked at him with panique. Jason handled most of that. Attempted unauthorized sale, coercive conduct, destruction of documents, and possible misrepresentation to a title company are not small matters. Claire looked at him with panic. Jason handled most of that. Daniel's face did not change. You represented yourself as having authority. I thought I could fix it before anyone got hurt. Margaret made a soft sound under her breath, but I raised a hand slightly. I wanted to hear Claire say it. All of it. Fix what I asked. Claire looked at me. The room seemed to hold its breath. My life, she said. 2 words. So small. So selfish. So sad. My divorce left me with almost nothing. She continued, her voice shaking. Peter had lawyers, better lawyers. He hid money. He made me look unstable. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell you. You told me you were lonely, I said. You told me he was cold. He was. But that wasn't all. She wiped at her face. I had debt, credit cards, legal fees. Jason said the house could solve everything. Thomas' jaw tightened. I looked at her. And you agreed. I thought... She stopped. What did you think? Her eyes dropped. I thought you didn't need all of it, all of it. The house where her father died. The rooms where I still said good morning to his photograph. The porch he repaired with aching hands during his last good summer. I felt a grief so sharp it almost became anger. You thought my home was extra, Claire cried harder. I didn't think of it like that. Yes, you did. Jason said it to me in my kitchen. You have more than you need. That is what both of you believed. She shook her head. I was scared. So was I. That made her look up. I leaned forward. Do you know what it feels like to wake up in your own house, afraid your daughter is searching your room? Do you know what it feels like to have your mail opened? Your memory questioned, your doctor appointment used like evidence. Do you know what it feels like to watch your husband's signature burn in your fireplace? Claire sobbed once, a broken sound. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. For a mother, those words are dangerous. They can open doors you locked for survival. They can make you remember every scraped knee, every fever, every school play, every birthday cake with uneven frosting. But apology is not a broom. It cannot sweep ash back into paper. You are sorry because it failed, I said. Her face crumpled. That's not fair. No, Claire. What wasn't fair was making me feel old and confused so you could take what your father left to protect me. She had no answer. Daniel placed the addendum on the table between us. Claire, he said, you need to understand the consequence. Under the recorded addendum, your conduct may trigger forfeiture of any claim tied to the protected residence. She stared at the page. Forfeiture. It means you may lose any inheritance interest or future claim connected to this property. Her hands began to tremble. Dad wouldn't do that to me. I felt the room go very still. For the first time, my voice hardened. Your father did not do this to you. You did this when you tried to take from me. Claire looked at me with shock. Maybe she had expected tears. Maybe she had expected me to soften at the mention of Richard. Maybe she still believed love meant I would carry the blame for what she had chosen. I would not. Not anymore. Thomas spoke, then his voice quiet but firm. Richard loved you, Claire. I know that. But he loved your mother, too. He knew love without protection can become a weapon in the wrong hands. Claire stared at him. You all think I'm a monster. No, I said. I think you became desperate and let desperation make decisions for you. That is different, but it still has consequences. She looked down at the table. What do you want from me? The answer came more clearly than I expected. I want you out of my house today. Her head snapped up. Mom? No. You and Jason will remove your belongings. Margaret and Thomas will be with me. Daniel will arrange a written notice. You will not enter my home again without my permission. I have nowhere to go. You had somewhere to go when you came to me. You turned it into a place I was afraid to sleep. She pressed both hands over her face. I'm your daughter, and I am your mother. Not your bank, not your obstacle, not your confused old woman. Your mother. The words shook me as I said them. Claire lowered her hands. For the first time, she looked truly ashamed. Not cornered. Ashamed. What about Jason? She whispered. What about him? He has things at the house. Then he can arrange to collect them with a police standby or through Daniel's office. She looked frightened. He'll be furious. That is no longer my responsibility. Maybe it had never been hers either, but she had tied herself to his anger and called it love. Daniel began gathering papers. Claire, I strongly recommend you seek independent legal counsel. Do not contact your mother directly except in writing or through my office for now. For now? She asked. I answered. Yes, for now. Her eyes searched my face. Does that mean someday you might talk to me? I looked at my daughter, the child I had rocked, the woman who had betrayed me, the wounded soul sitting in the wreckage of her own greed. I still love you, I said. She broke down. But love is not permission, I continued. And forgiveness, if it comes, will not mean handing you the keys again. That was the moment Claire seemed to understand that she had not only lost the house, she had lost access to the version of me who would make everything easy because she was my child. Later that afternoon, Thomas drove me back to Maple Ridge Drive. Margaret followed. Daniel had already arranged for a written notice to be emailed to Claire, and a local officer agreed to be present while she removed her belongings. Seeing my house again made my chest ache. The porch, the maple tree, the front window where Richard used to tape paper snowflakes when Claire was little. My home looked the same, but I knew I would never enter it the same woman. Claire arrived an hour later in silence. No Jason. She packed with red eyes and shaking hands. Margaret stayed in the hallway. Thomas waited near the front door. The officer stood quietly in the living room, professional and kind. When Claire came downstairs with her suitcases, she paused by the fireplace. The ashes were still there. She looked at them for a long time. Then she whispered, I didn't think it would feel like this. I did not ask what she meant. Losing, betraying, being caught. Maybe all three. At the door, she turned to me. Do you hate me? The question nearly destroyed me. No, I said. But I am no longer willing to disappear so you can survive. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. Then she walked out of my house. When the door closed behind her, I stood in the foyer listening to the silence. For the first time in weeks, it did not feel like danger. It felt like grief. But underneath the grief was something stronger. My home was still mine, and so was my voice. That night after Claire left, I did something I had avoided for nearly 5 years. I cleaned Richard's side of the bedroom. Not completely, not in the way people mean when they say they are moving on. I did not empty every drawer or fold every shirt into a donation box. I was not ready for that, and maybe readiness was not the point. But I opened the top drawer of his nightstand. For years, that drawer had felt sacred. Inside were small, ordinary things that somehow held more grief than photographs. His old watch with the cracked leather band, a bottle of peppermint antacids, 2 pens from Prescott Home, furnishings, a folded receipt from the hardware store, and a paperback mystery with a bookmark still tucked between pages. I sat on the edge of the bed and lifted each object carefully. The house was quiet now. Not the dangerous quiet from before, but the hollow quiet after a storm has passed and left branches scattered across the yard. Margaret had offered to stay the night. Thomas had offered too. I thanked them both and said no. I needed one night alone with my home, with Richard, with what remained. The fireplace had been cleaned earlier. Thomas insisted on doing it. He removed the ashes of the burned contracts while I stood in the doorway, unable to look away. He placed them in a small metal container and told me Daniel might want them preserved, though we both knew ash could not prove much. Still, I kept them. Not as evidence, as a reminder. In Richard's nightstand beneath the mystery novel, I found an envelope I did not recognize. It was cream-colored, sealed, and slightly yellowed at the edges. My name was written on the front in Richard's hand. Evie. Just that. My breath caught. For a moment, I only held it. The envelope had no date, no instructions, no explanation. I wondered how many times I had dusted that nightstand without knowing his final words were waiting inches away from my hand. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, 2 pages long, written in blue ink. My dearest Evie, if you are reading this, it means you have found one more thing I tucked away, because I was never as good at saying hard things out loud as I was at putting them on paper. I stopped reading. The room blurred. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. I could hear his voice so clearly. Richard, who could charm a difficult customer, comfort a crying child, and negotiate a delivery delay with humor, but who always struggled when the truth was too tender. I wiped my eyes and continued. You used to tease me for keeping too many contracts, too many copies, too many records. You were right to tease me. I probably did keep too much. But some papers are not about money. Some papers are about dignity. I hope you never need the protections Daniel and I put in place. I hope Claire grows into a woman who understands love without needing ownership. I hope grief never makes anyone in our family reach for things that do not belong to them. But hope is not a plan, Evie. And I have loved you too long to leave you with only hope. A sound broke from me, then half sob, half laugh. Hope is not a plan. That was Richard. I could see him saying it at the kitchen table, tapping his pen against a folder, giving me that look that meant he knew I was rolling my eyes, but would win the argument anyway. I kept reading. You gave me the best years of my life. You stood beside me when the store was nothing but a rented room with bad lighting and one delivery truck that stalled in winter. You balanced books when I forgot invoices. You smiled at customers when your feet hurt. You believed in my ideas before they deserved believing in. So, if anyone ever tries to tell you that what we built was mine alone, you look them in the eye and tell them they are wrong. That house is not just wood and brick. It is your early mornings, your patience, your second-hand dresses, your missed vacations, your hands counting cash after closing your prayers when I was too proud to admit I was scared. Do not let anyone make you feel like a guest in the life you helped build. I had to stop again. My hands shook so badly the paper rustled. For weeks, Claire had treated me as if I were sitting on something that rightfully belonged to others. Jason had looked around my rooms like they were numbers on a spreadsheet. Even I, in my weakest moments, had wondered if I was selfish for keeping so much space when my daughter was struggling. Richard's letter reached into that doubt and pulled it out by the roots. Do not let anyone make you feel like a guest in the life you helped build. I read those words 3 times. Then I continued. About Claire. I know you love her. I love her too. Nothing I have done was meant to punish her. If she comes to you with a true heart, help her as you can. But if she comes with pressure, paper's guilt, or someone else whispering in her ear, remember this: being a mother does not require becoming defenseless. A child can be loved without being obeyed. A child can be forgiven without being trusted. And a child can be lost for a season without you handing them the keys to every room inside you. My tears fell directly onto the page. I quickly moved the letter away, horrified I might damage it. A child can be forgiven without being trusted, I whispered. The words felt cruel at first. Then they felt merciful, because I wanted to forgive Claire someday. The desire was still there, alive beneath the hurt. But I did not trust her, and admitting that did not make me a bad mother. It made me honest. The second page was shorter. Thomas knows where some things are recorded. Daniel knows why. If you are reading this because trouble has come, let them help you. Do not protect another person's reputation by sacrificing your safety. Secrets grow teeth when good women stay silent. And Evie, if I am gone, please do not spend the rest of your life guarding my ghost. Live in the house. Change the curtains if you want. Paint the kitchen that green color I pretended to hate. Invite people over. Laugh loudly. Buy the good coffee. Sit on the porch and let the neighbors talk too long. Our love was never meant to become a museum. It was meant to become courage. I love you beyond every contract I ever signed. Richard. By the time I finished, I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. Not because the letter made me sad, though it did, because it gave me permission. Permission to stay. Permission to change. Permission to stop treating survival as betrayal. I placed the letter on the bed beside me and looked around the room. The curtains were still the same blue Richard had chosen because he said they reminded him of Lake Erie. The dresser still held his cufflinks in a small wooden bowl. His robe still hung behind the door. For years, I had kept the house almost exactly as it was, because changing it felt like losing him again. But Richard had not asked to be preserved in dust. He had asked me to live. The next morning, Thomas came by with coffee and a paper bag of cinnamon rolls from the bakery under Daniel's office. Margaret arrived 10-minute suits later with a vase of yellow tulips. They found me in the kitchen with paint samples spread across the table. Thomas stopped in the doorway. "Well, look at that." Margaret smiled. Planning a revolution, I held up a soft green sample. "Richard hated this color," I said. Thomas chuckled. "Richard pretended to hate that color because he knew you liked arguing with him about it." I laughed. A real laugh. It startled all three of us. Then I showed them the letter. Thomas read it slowly, his eyes shining. When he finished, he folded it with careful hands and passed it back to me. "He gave me something too," he said. From inside his jacket, he removed another sealed envelope. My name was on that one as well. "Richard asked me to hold this until I believed you had faced the thing he feared most." My breath caught. "What thing?" Thomas looked at me gently. "Being made to feel powerless by someone you loved." I opened the envelope. Inside was a single small key and a note. "Evie. This is for the safe deposit box at the bank. Not because there are riches inside. There aren't. Just a few letters, photographs, and copies of things that mattered. If you found your way here, then you already know the most important thing I tried to leave you. Not the house. Not the contracts. Your own authority. Never give that away. R." I closed my hand around the key. For the first time since Claire had returned to my porch, I did not feel like I was waiting for the next blow. I felt like I was standing on ground Richard had helped strengthen long before I knew I would need it. That afternoon, I called Daniel and told him to proceed with securing the house, enforcing the addendum if necessary, and requiring all communication from Claire to go through his office. Then I called a locksmith. Not because I hated my daughter, because I finally understood that love without boundaries had nearly cost me everything. When the locksmith changed the front door lock, I stood on the porch beside Margaret, holding Richard's letter in my coat pocket. The new key felt strange in my palm. Heavy, clean, mine. In the weeks after Claire left my house, became mine in ways I had never expected to feel again. At first, I moved through it cautiously. I still locked my bedroom door out of habit. I still checked the mailbox twice, half expecting letters to disappear before my hand reached them. I still paused whenever a car slowed in front of the house. Fear does not leave just because danger walks out the door. It lingers in corners. It sits in your chest when the phone rings. It makes you question silence, even when silence is finally safe. But slowly, little by little, the house began to breathe differently. The locksmith changed every exterior lock. Daniel arranged for formal notices to be filed and sent. Buckeye Heritage Title terminated the transaction permanently. Patricia Wells submitted written confirmation that no listing or sale would proceed without direct communication from me. Sarah Collins helped me secure my account's update passwords and put alerts on anything connected to my finances. For the first time in years, I opened a new folder myself. I labeled it in thick black marker, Evelyn Prescott, My Records. Then I laughed because I sounded exactly like Richard. Thomas came over every Tuesday morning for coffee. Not because there was legal work left to do, but because he said Richard would haunt him if he let me drink bad coffee alone. Margaret came on Fridays, usually with flowers or gossip, sometimes both. The first real change I made was the kitchen. I painted it green. Not a timid green, not a barely there shade someone could mistake for gray. A soft, warm garden green that caught the morning light and made the room feel alive. While the painter rolled color over the old cream walls, I sat at the kitchen table holding Richard's letter. I could almost hear him pretending to groan. Green Evie. In the kitchen. Yes, I whispered, and you can't stop me. Then I laughed so hard, the painter looked concerned. After that, changes came easier. I replaced the heavy living room curtains with lighter ones. I moved Richard's recliner near the front window instead of leaving it angled toward the television like a shrine. I framed his letter and placed a copy in my bedroom while the original went into the safe deposit box with the certified documents. I did not erase him. I let him move with me. That was different. The room that hurt most was his office. For a long time, I stood in the doorway and saw only what Claire and Jason had done. Drawers opened, folders, missing papers, scattered, trust broken. But one Saturday afternoon, Thomas brought over a box of photographs from Prescott Home Furnishings that he had kept in his garage for years. There were pictures of Richard and me standing beside furniture deliveries, laughing with customers holding our first oversized ribbon-cutting scissors. There was one of Claire at age 9, sitting on a velvet sofa in the showroom with a paper crown on her head because she had declared herself Queen of Discounted Sectionals. That photograph broke me. I sat on the floor and cried with it in my hand. Not because I wanted the recent version of Claire back in my house, because I missed the child who had once belonged so safely in my heart. Thomas sat beside me without speaking. Finally I said, "How do I love her now?" He answered quietly, "From a distance that does not destroy you." So that is what I learned to do. Claire did not contact me for 2 weeks after she left. Daniel received several emails from her asking about belongings, legal consequences, and whether the forfeiture clause would really be enforced. He responded professionally. I did not read every message. I was learning that I did not need to absorb every storm just because my daughter created it. Jason disappeared faster than smoke. According to Claire, he stopped answering her calls the day after the title company meeting. He removed his things from the house through arrangements made by Daniel, but he did not look at me when he came. The officer stayed on the porch. Thomas stood beside me in the foyer. Jason carried out 2 suitcases, a box of electronics, and the same leather duffel bag he had brought the first night. At the door, he paused. "You know," he said, "Claire was drowning before I met her." I looked at him calmly. "And you handed her an anchor." His face tightened. Then he left. I never saw him again. A month later, Claire sent me a handwritten letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, in an envelope with my name written carefully across the front. I let it sit on the kitchen table for 3 days before opening it. When I finally read it, I did so with Margaret sitting beside me. Claire wrote that she was staying in a small apartment near Dayton. She had taken a job as an office manager for a dental clinic. She had contacted a therapist. She said she was beginning to understand that what she called survival had become entitlement. She admitted she had let Jason's promises sound like rescue because she was ashamed of needing help. Then came the sentence I read 5 times. "I did not just try to take your house, Mom. I tried to take away your right to say no." That was the first sentence that felt like truth. Not complete healing. Not enough to undo what happened, but truth. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I did not call her that day, or the next. Forgiveness, I had learned, does not have to sprint. It can walk slowly with a cane if it needs to. 3 months after the title company meeting, Claire and I met at a small cafe halfway between Columbus and Dayton. Daniel knew about it. Margaret knew too. I drove myself. When Claire walked in, she looked thinner. No white blazer, no polished mask, just jeans, a cardigan, and tired eyes. She stopped beside the table. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Claire." She sat across from me and folded her hands around a cup of tea she had not yet tasted. For a while, we talked like strangers learning a safe language. Her job, my kitchen, Thomas's terrible jokes, Margaret's tulips. Then Claire began to cry. "I don't expect you to trust me," she said. "Good," I replied softly, "because I don't." She nodded, accepting the truth instead of fighting it. "But I am glad you came," I added. Her face crumpled. That was the beginning. Not a reunion, not a miracle, not one of those movie endings where betrayal dissolves after a single apology. The beginning. We agreed to meet once a month in public. No requests for money. No conversations about inheritance. No visits to my house. If she stayed in therapy and kept communicating honestly through proper boundaries, we would see what time could repair. She accepted every condition. That mattered. Back home, I turned Richard's office into a small reading room. One wall held photographs from Prescott Home Furnishings. Another held shelves of books, including the mystery novel from his nightstand. On the desk, I placed a framed line from his letter. "Do not let anyone make you feel like a guest in the life you helped build." Sometimes, neighbors came over for coffee there. Sometimes, I sat alone and read. Sometimes, I simply looked at the photographs and let memory be warm instead of heavy. The certified copies stayed safe at the bank, but I kept one photocopy in my new records folder, not because I expected another fight, but because I had learned the difference between fear and wisdom. Fear says, "Never trust anyone again." Wisdom says, "Trust with your eyes open." A year after Claire burned the contracts, she came to Columbus for lunch with me and Margaret at a restaurant downtown. Afterward, she walked me to my car. She did not ask to come home. She did not mention the house. She only looked at me and said, "I'm still working on becoming someone you can feel safe around." I believed that sentence more than any apology. I touched her cheek. "I'm working on healing without pretending it didn't happen." She nodded. That was enough for that day. When I drove back to Maple Ridge Drive, the afternoon sun rested on the green kitchen walls. The new curtains, the polished table, the house Richard and I had built through work, sacrifice, and love. I unlocked my front door with the new key. Inside, everything was quiet. This time, the quiet did not frighten me. It welcomed me. I walked into the reading room, touched Richard's photograph, and whispered, "We kept it." Then I corrected myself. "No," I said softly, "I kept myself." Because in the end, the certified copies saved my house, but the truth saved my voice. And that was the inheritance Richard had protected all along. True love should never require you to surrender your dignity. Evelyn's story reminds us that betrayal hurts most when it comes from someone we once protected, raised, or trusted with our whole heart. But it also teaches us something powerful. Being kind does not mean being defenseless, and being a mother does not mean allowing your life to be taken apart in the name of family. Sometimes the truth survives because someone was wise enough to preserve it. Sometimes justice arrives not with shouting, but with quiet records, steady witnesses, and the courage to say no more. Forgiveness can be beautiful, but forgiveness without boundaries can become another form of self-abandonment. Evelyn did not stop loving Claire, but she finally stopped disappearing for her. And that is the deepest lesson: you can love someone and still protect yourself. You can forgive and still change the locks. You can grieve what was lost and still build a peaceful life from what remains. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set a painful boundary with someone you loved? Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional family stories about truth, strength, and healing.